Warhammer x LOTM, The Black Emperor by Jiao Chao Mo. Chapter 522-536. Chapter 522, The Euclidean Sigil. 844. M30. Wangquan Shadow, Primarch's office. My lord, Arsena Dun said, holding a data slate, the 4th and 11th battle groups have broken through the Ran Dan front line and have reached the Obscurus sector. The other 6 battle groups are expected to enter the Obscurus sector within 15 standard days. Ning Lu nodded slightly, satisfied with the legion's progress. As of now, 4 Titan legions have been surrounded by Xenos and completely annihilated. The Emperor has decided to dispatch the Harrowing Convent to deal with the Xeno threat. Ning Lu heard that Huang Laohan had finally sent out the Harrowing Convent and couldn't help but think to himself. Huang Laohan finally recognized the immense threat of Ran Dan and dispatched his trump card. The Dark Angels, Ultramarines, Space Wolves, Emperor's Children, Thousand Sons, and Word Bearers were the first to respond to your and Lord Perturbo's requests for aid, sending warriors as reinforcements. Ning Lu's eyes lit up, and he thought to himself, the opportunity for corrosion has arrived. Have the commanders of the various task forces been confirmed? My lord, only 2 have been confirmed so far. The commander of the Thousand Sons is Librarian Hather Mayat. Ning Lu was not surprised that Magnus had sent Hather to support him. He had once been seconded to his legion, serving by his side, and was a bond of friendship between the 2 legions, naturally making him the best choice. The commander of the Emperor's Children is 2nd Company Commander Akurduana. Upon hearing this, Ning Lu immediately recalled the Battle of Gardinal. Akurduana was originally sent by Fulgrim in 869 to his close brother, Ferus Manus. At the end of the Battle of Gardinal, when the desperate Gardinal people used a ring world weapon to attack Ferus, he broke into the command room and detonated the command center at the cost of his life. Akurduana is the ceiling of combat power among the Astartes, only a handful of people can rival him. He is indeed a talent. Although Sequence Fender, Wind Blessed, Chesney, and Rose Bishop, Ramsey are certainly stronger than him in combat. Among Sequence 7, Pyromaniac, Sanchez and Weapon Master, Thierry Vieira are also not weaker than him, but if I can corrode him, I don't mind having too many talents. Ning Lu considered the possibility of corrosion, Akurduana. It's not impossible. He has a considerable degree of loyalty to Ferus and generously went to his death. Akurduana admires the strong. Corrosion, him is actually not difficult, at least much easier than Balsa-Kucheri. Well, I am also his savior, so it is only right for him to be corrupted to serve me. What about the commanders of the other legion task forces? Ning Lu asked. The Astropathic Choir Master is currently contacting the other legions. I will report to you immediately upon confirmation. Order them to muster at the Kalem Gate, Ning Lu commanded. After the original body servant left, a whispering murmur echoed in Ning Lu's ears. He left Jushin's spear on the weapon rack and then came to the disordered country. Ning Lu's psychic vision spread, touching the constantly expanding and contracting orb of light, pulling Howard into the disordered country. My lord, my fleet has arrived at Abyss Port and is ready to launch an attack. Very good, Ning Lu said, seeing a hint of sadness on Howard's face. Is there anything else? The 6th battle group encountered the Basmimanic people in the Weeping Star system, and Pasquale was killed in battle. Fleamini led 13 royal court monks, slaughtered countless beasts, destroyed the teleportation jamming device, and subsequently eliminated the Xenos that had invaded the star system in the ensuing battle. He achieved a glorious victory. Howard said with a sigh. He had also encountered the Basmimanic people. These metallic beast-like Xenos are powerful warriors. Fleamini leading 13 men into a Xeno warship without a single loss was nothing short of a miracle. Howard gathered his thoughts and stated the main purpose of his prayer. The 6th battle group routed the main force of the Basmimanic people, but suffered considerable losses, and now there is no chapter master. Fleamini, as the highest-ranking noble in the battle group, is temporarily acting as commander. Convey my order. Fleamini is to be appointed lord of the 6th battle group, Ning Lu commanded. He then thought of Howard mentioning the metallic skin of the Basmimanic people, which possessed powerful defenses and was likely a potion ingredient. And he needed to establish real-time inter-system communication with the 6th Battle Group. Fleamini, having been saved by him, was completely loyal to himself, so he spoke. Tell him the ritual procedure and instruct him to pray to me. The sacrifice is 2 sets of Basmimanic people's metallic skins. Yes, my lord, Howard acknowledged. Black mist enveloped Howard's body, sending him back to arbitration. As the black mist receded, Howard slowly rose after praising the Black Emperor. He walked out of the altar, and after exiting the door, the brain cat immediately came to his side. He left the dormitory and came to the office. Howard arrived at the office and looked at Fleamini, who was waiting. Congratulations, the Gene Father has decided that you will be the chapter master. Fleamini was first delighted, then asked. But I haven't received the order. Did the astropathic choir master receive the order? You will soon know, this is what I am here to tell you. Howard walked towards a black scale, placed his hand on it, and infused it with psychic vision. The lucky one noticed that as the patterns on the ground lit up one by one, psychic vision rapidly spread, covering the entire office. The diviner psychic felt his connection with the warp completely severed. Encountering such a situation for the first time, Fleamini couldn't help but feel a sense of emptiness. The lucky one felt that his Beyonder abilities had not disappeared, his super high psychic vision could still perceive his surroundings, and the physical and brain enhancements brought by the robot had not been lost. He gazed at the ground patterns, discovering that they were complex designs composed of a series of geometric shapes such as triangles, quadrilaterals, and pentagrams. Fleamini's superhuman brain allowed him to instantly determine that there were a total of 33 shapes. This is a sigil created by Father, similar in function to the Sohm sigil created by Lord Magnus, which is to isolate this place and prevent others from prying. But unlike Lord Magnus, who is the only one who can use it, Hather and Ahriman cannot complete it, the royal court monk can also complete it. Of course, it requires a sufficiently deep understanding of it. Currently, only 5 people, including myself, the original body servant, the librarian, and the Death Lord, have mastered it. The lucky one's eyes gleamed as he stared intently at the mysterious sigil on the ground. I believe you will soon begin to study it, but for now, let me tell you something more important. The Black Emperor's prayer ritual. 3 standard hours later, after Fleamini saluted Howard with thanks, he carried 2 Basmimanic people's metallic skins and walked into the altar. To expedite the ritual, Howard generously allowed him temporary use. The items on the altar were all arranged, but Fleamini still cautiously checked them once more. After confirming that the black iron scale on his left and the cast iron, Monarch's iron law, on his right were all in their correct positions, he walked to the candelabrum. Fleamini's palm hovered over the candlewick, rubbing it to ignite the candle with psychic vision. After lighting 11 candles, some upright and some inverted, he took out a ceremonial dagger from his person. Fleamini calmed his excited heart and chanted in Dun language, "In the name of the Black Emperor, you are sanctified." Psychic vision burst forth from the dagger's tip, and Fleamini stepped around, an invisible power surging outwards. Without needing to activate psychic vision, the lucky one felt that a wall made of psychic vision had indeed formed around him, excluding all impure things. Subsequently, Fleamini took a deep breath and entered the Telema meditation state. After his body, mind, and soul quieted down, he knelt on the black onyx cushion and recited the formal incantation in Dun language. The Black Emperor of the Order Shadows. Quote. By the 5th recitation, Fleamini felt a sudden gust of wind within the sealed psychic vision wall. Amidst the surging black mist, a mysterious nation of disorder slowly opened its door to him. The lucky one felt that as the black mist enveloped him, an invisible, incomprehensible, and irresistible force was exerted upon him. Fleamini came to his senses, already in the mysterious nation of disorder. The lucky one felt that his surroundings were shrouded in mist, and since he awakened as a psychic, he had never felt his perception so limited. After being granted power by the Gene Father, he had never experienced this again. This is the great power of the Black Emperor. Fleamini knelt on the ground, devoutly praising the majestic figure in the depths of the black mist. My lord. Ning Lu nodded slightly, his gaze sweeping over the metallic garments stacked on either side of Fleamini. Judging from the psychic vision radiance, it should be psychic vision material. It should be sequence 6 level potion ingredients, but not those already unlocked on the blasphemy slate. My potion is about to be digested, and then I will be able to unlock the remaining half of the potion formula. The Baron of Corruption's gaze fell back on Fleamini. You have mastered the power I bestowed upon you. Yes, my lord, the same as the previous 2 times. Soon, I will bestow new power upon you. Ning Lu thought, and through telepathy, sent the Euclidean sigil to Fleamini. The sigil he comprehended, relying on his own geometry ability, was understood from geometric shapes, and thus he named it the Euclidean sigil. Thank you for your bestowal, my lord. I will certainly study diligently. Black mist engulfed Fleamini, sending him back to arbitration. Ning Lu then went to the first level of space, instructing the space monkey to prepare the Calamity Priest potion using Calamity Mantis and other materials, and then bestowed it upon Fleamini. Sloth's terrifying spaceship. Abyss Port is a transportation hub in the Colony Ned New district, spanning the Obscurus sector and the Limit Star territory. Most of the major trade routes in the entire star system pass through here. Orbital shipyards, like islands, revolve around the planet. Innumerable mooring platforms, docks, gantries, suspended workshops, worker residences, and the spaces between mooring platforms are crammed with warships. Dozens of worlds in the eastern part of the star system eagerly awaited the arrival of transport ships laden with Zavalic agricultural products. The industrial products, such as equipment and parts, produced by Zuia, which the former star system lord vigorously developed, passed inspection but could not be put into the first phase of Masira Plani's construction as planned. The first batch of rising nobles in the star system, nobles and merchants from Monakia, had their luxuriously decorated spaceships tightly bound by anchor cables. The Ramirez-class star fort, Colonnade Abyss, began its long journey of loyal guardianship 25 years ago. The 4 quadrants of the Colonnade Abyss remained in high-speed operation, fending off wave after wave of attacks. A Ramirez-class star fort could defeat a fleet in a short amount of time, but facing an endless swarm of drones and continuously incoming Randan warships, it could only barely fulfill its duty, preventing the aliens from causing substantial damage to Abyss Port. The fleets of the 1st, 6th, 7th, and 8th battle groups, after warping into the star system, immediately brought a change to the battle. While Fleamini prayed to the Black Emperor, 3 of the 7th Battle Group's 4 Relic-class battleships, along with the 8th Battle Group's Blade, had already launched their attacks. Lance weapon arrays and bombardment cannons pierced like spears into the ships bristling with spikes and flails. Macro cannon shells swept through like a storm of flames, and scorching lances tore apart the alien warships. As waves of attacks pierced through the alien battleships, a black prototype vessel emerged from the burning wreckage. The obsidian-like spaceship rotated slowly, its center glowing with an evil, crimson light. Compared to the surrounding warships, its diameter was less than 10 kilometers, yet it exhibited a colossal size that defied physical rules. The anomalous warship identification runes immediately caught the attention of the mimic chambers of the various battle groups. Upon identifying its non-imperial Gothic design, and even its difference from the spiky appearance of Randan warships, it immediately drew the attention of the Order Shadows. They matched the rotating obsidian spaceship with Sloth's ship from the data provided by the Gene Father, and the report was immediately sent to the various chapter masters. After Sloth's ship appeared, the crimson light in its center grew increasingly brighter. As energy readings on the auspexes of the Order Shadows ships rapidly climbed, the dazzling light quickly surpassed the brightness of a star. Immediately, a star explosion-like radiance engulfed the entire star system. The mimic chambers of the Order Shadows ships were filled with red alarm signals from their auspexes. Thierry Vieira rose from his command throne, a series of piercing alarms blaring in his helmet's internal communicator. Fortress-grade void shield overloaded. Main lance weapon array offline. Port macro cannon array B16 malfunctioning. Quote. His captain, a student of ratiocination, shouted a warning. Night Lord, the alien warships are charging through. Thierry looked at the holographic tactical display. He saw alien warships, buffeted by the spreading shockwave, crashing towards his ship like small boats caught in a storm. Reactivate the void shield. My lord, I'm trying, but it will take time. The captain hastily replied. I should remind you, the Randan ships, thrusters are coming at full speed, they've never been this frantic before. The energy shockwave has boosted their speed, impact is imminent. Before the captain could finish, the blade shuddered violently. Thierry activated the magnetic locks on his combat boots, steadying himself amidst the earthquake-like tremors. As spikes tore through the hull, a grating metallic screech echoed on the bridge. Aliens with needle-like wings poured in frantically through the breach. Thierry flicked his wrists, and two longswords were in his hands. In his right hand, he held a power sword forged by the Gene Seed Primarch Vulcan, shimmering with dazzling blue light. Thierry's left-hand weapon was a psychic longsword forged for him by Master Kaiser. After carrying it for over 30 years, Thierry possessed a faint psychic ability. As psychic energy was infused, the longsword glowed with brilliant white light. Thierry soared towards the aliens that had breached the warship, the superhuman swiftness of the weapon master leaving his guard far behind. He felt his thoughts momentarily stall, and his body paused. Thierry's black eyes flashed. He saw a bridge officer, terrified, running away quickly. As he ran, he fumbled to pull up his rebreather mask. The rebreather covered his face, and he gasped loudly, his chest heaving violently. Suddenly, his running steps halted, as if bound by telekinesis. He was immediately tackled by an alien, and hundreds of steel needles instantly pierced him. Crimson reflected in Thierry's eyes. In an instant, he donned his war mask. The power of rage filled his body, and he shot forward like lightning. Thierry's mind remained steady. His eyes intently bypassed the flailing aliens, locking onto the Mind Eater. A dozen or so aliens, covered in steel needles and spikes, immediately noticed the charging black armored figure. They shrieked and dove at Thierry. The weapon master's blade spun rapidly, and a horizontal blue figure 8 instantly formed in the air. The Ganfaso-style figure 8 rapidly expanded, and the shrieking disintegrating force field energy simultaneously sliced through the dozen or so aliens. As their broken limbs fell, the weapon master had already moved past them. He weaved through hundreds of aliens, his twin swords slashing like a storm. Slashing, cleaving, sweeping, thrusting, the alveolus swordplay was performed by the weapon master with divine skill, and in a few breaths, hundreds of aliens were slaughtered. The red line running through the Mind Eater's head pulsed with a crimson light. He raised his curved arm, and a green lightning bolt struck from the air. A series of electrical currents flashed before the Honor Guard members, forcing them to stop. They saw their lord's explosive speed, surpassing the psychic lightning. The green electrical glow was left behind him, and in a flash, he had charged before the Mind Eater. The Mind Eater swung its crystal longsword at Thierry. The weapon master simultaneously held both arms level. He swung his right arm, and the power sword collided with the crystal longsword. Amidst the grating energy collision blast and tearing sound, the Mind Eater was repelled by the much smaller weapon master. The weapon master's movements were continuous. With his left arm held level, the sword tip thrust forward sharply. The weapon master's death blow, Elka style, pierced through the Mind Eater's abdomen and into its brain. Mucus splattered, and the Mind Eater's body split open, falling limply to either side. Thierry, who had swiftly killed the Mind Eater, was about to charge towards another Mind Eater when the voice of the student of ratiocination sounded in his helmet's internal communicator. Night Lord, that's Sloth's ship moving, it's flying rapidly in our direction. Based on the Randan aliens' unconventional tactics, launching a brutal, mutually destructive attack, I and the tech sergeant in charge of the Mimic Chamber have deduced that they are executing Sloth's orders, covering his spaceship's escape. Thierry continued his advance, swinging his twin swords in a killing spree. We cannot let Sloth's spaceship escape. It hasn't released another attack, which must be due to a massive energy expenditure. This is the best chance to deal with it. He cannot be allowed to escape like this. Are our weapon systems back online? Thierry Vieira asked. The energy supplied by the Retribution-class reactor has restarted the ship's power systems and void shield defenses. The Lance is charging, still requiring 5 minutes and 13 seconds. The captain responded quickly. After inspecting all weapon systems, he finally reported the weapons that could be used. The ether cannon and 8 macro cannons can engage. Attack. Thierry immediately gave the order. Yes, my lord. The ether cannon, powered by its independent ether matrix, was unaffected by the attack. The long, narrow gun barrels mounted on the underside of the blade's bow glowed with multicolored light. The multicolored light pierced through the warp debris, striking the obsidian disc-like vessel. The multicolored light vanished instantly, as if swallowed by the darkness. The black disc-shaped vessel suddenly accelerated, and macro cannon shells grazed its hull. As Thierry received the report of the attack's ineffectiveness, he leapt up, his twin swords crossing as he struck the Mind Eater. He landed steadily, and the Mind Eater's body crashed onto the deck before him. Thierry recalled that the data provided by the Black Emperor mentioned that the Sloth possessed advanced technology, surpassing human and Eldari technology in certain aspects. They were masters of the physical domain, capable of creating engines that did not rely on the warp. Display tactical data, mark the Sloth vessel, and set up an interception plan. Tens of seconds later, the voice of a student of ratiocination sounded in the comms channel. My lord, possible interception routes have been calculated and are displayed on the tactical table. Thierry quickly returned to the holographic tactical table. His gaze swept over the red disc-shaped vessel, then looked at the green lines emitted from the flagship. Route 1. Estimated success probability 53.84%. Route 2. Estimated success probability 29.61%. The superhuman gaze of the Order shadows simultaneously took in the loss report flashing in the bottom right corner. Battleship Unyielding Eagle lost. Cruiser Carvastus lost. Frigate Son of Kaiser lost. A sharp glint flashed in Thierry's eyes as he gave the order. Prepare for boarding, Route 1. From the appearance of the Sloth's special vessel, he deduced that the enemy encountered was at least a supervisor. Although the Black Emperor believed that facing a supervisor, he could only win by throwing grenades into the Sloth's body, Thierry still decided to board. Only his flagship was on the Sloth vessel's escape route, and he would not retreat. Captain, I need you to restore all weapon systems as quickly as possible and attack the Sloth's vessel, forcing them to fly along the path of maximum probability. Immediately send messages to the Arbitrator Lord and Reaper Lord, requesting their assistance. Although Thierry decided to take a risk, he would not blindly seek death. If he could find an opportunity to kill the Sloth, that would be best. If there was no opportunity, as long as he could delay until Howard Fend and others arrived, he could kill the Sloth supervisor. My lord, your orders have been carried out. According to calculations, using the Gauntlet assault craft has the highest success probability. The flight deck is ready. Thierry then led the Honor Guard into the flight deck. The Honor Guard members followed their Night Lord into the heavily armored bow. They connected multiple retractable inertia dampening clamps to their power armor. Unlike some battle groups equipped with Saturn Pattern Terminator prototypes or Iron Rider Terminator prototypes. To maximize their agility and skill, the 8th Battle Group still used modified power armor as their equipment. Thierry and his Honor Guard were equipped with the Lord Hunter Suite's personal growth system, with protection featuring Space Dwarf's Weave Shield technology, and equipped with an activatable Randan personal energy shield. 20 robots activated their rocket engines, and the Black Gauntlet assault craft flew out from the deck, propelled by a blazing light. At the same time, the Blade's Retribution-class reactor pumped. The main lance pierced through the warp dust, striking directly at the Sloth's vessel. The entire battleship turned, aligning its right side with the enemy ship, increasing the interception area. On the tactical screens in front of the robots, runes and massive amounts of data flashed rapidly. Their brains worked at high speed, constantly pushing and pulling joysticks in the warp to adjust direction. 20 black assault craft spread out like a large net, dispersing around the interception route formulated by the student of ratiocination. "My lord," the student of ratiocination's voice sounded in Thierry's helmet. "Following your orders, suppressing fire has covered the enemy vessel's other escape directions. The estimated interception success probability has risen to 83.95%. The Arbitrator Lord and Reaper Lord have sent communications. They have begun pursuit of the Sloth battleship." "I understand." Thierry's tone was sharp. He gave orders in the squad channel. "Don your war masks." His requirement for his honor guard was that they must master the war mask, be proficient in swordsmanship, and be skilled in using Vostronia's Osber Via and the Kaiser's Alvula swordplay. At the same time, each of them had to possess a psychic greatsword forged by a Kaiser master swordsmith and wear it for a sufficient period of time. 200 pugilists donned their war masks in an instant, rapidly reviewing tactical data. The Order Shadow's fleet recovered from the brief chaos caused by the terrifying shockwave released by the Sloth vessel, repelled the Xenos, boarding action, and restarted systems such as the Void Shield. But the fleet still paid a considerable price. His battle group alone lost 5 capital ships and 13 frigates. The pugilists calmly accumulated the power of their rage through their war masks. He caressed the hilt of his sword, awaiting the moment to unleash his power. "My lord," the robot shouted in the comms channel, "we succeeded. Prepare for impact. 3, 2, 1. The next moment, a tremendous force slammed into their backs, throwing their bodies forward, pressing them tightly into their seats by the clamps. Blazing flames released by giant melta rose skyward. The obsidian-like Sloth vessel was smashed with large holes, and its armored bow was pierced. "Go!" Thierry was the first to unfasten the clamps restraining him, and with a flash of his figure, he disappeared into the assault ramp. The honor guard followed closely. Specializing in the war mask, they drew immense power from their rage. The surging power swelled their bodies, causing their 2 hearts to pump vigorously, blood burning within their bodies, secreting adrenaline beyond combat stimulants, making everything around them slow down. The psychic great swords in their hands gleamed with dazzling light. The pugilists crashed into the Xenos horde like beams of light. Stab, stab, stab. The psychic great swords swung in unison, a continuous whooshing sound echoing throughout the deck. Amidst the brilliant light like a rising sun, one Xeno after another rapidly vanished in the missile explosion like radiance. In 2 breaths, the sword light washed over the entire deck. Thierry's gaze was deep as he looked towards the spiral passage, feeling a powerful, evil will rapidly approaching. Chapter 525. Sloth, the Overseer, I've actually been imprisoned. Sloth's obsidian disk spaceship. Thierry Vieira looked into the depths of the dim corridor, where 5 mind-eaters surrounded a figure cloaked in a gray cape. Beneath the hood, clusters of worms writhed madly. Overseer Sloth raised the staff of necrosis in his hand, and a disgusting light flared, followed by arcs of electricity and ghostly light shooting towards Thierry. The weapon master had already moved first, launching a swift charge. The necrotic ray struck the obsidian deck, and the guard members, who were charging right behind the Night Lord, saw a large hole left in the deck. The weapon, blurring the lines between machine and organic matter, crackled with frothy, viscous fluid, like the surging of a disgusting bodily fluid. The Order shadows swiftly bypassed from both sides, the putrid slime disgusted them. This turned into anger. The war masks then transformed their anger into strength. Their speed suddenly surged, breaking through the numbing sensation caused by the neurotoxin, and in an instant, they collided with Sloth's servants. A pugilist held his sword horizontally, meeting a crashing crystal greatsword. With a bang, he was shaken back 2 steps. A mind-eater's tentacle then sent another guard member flying. The pugilist tumbled and fell through the air. An invisible force surged through the pugilist's exceptionally robust body, and the telekinesis echoing around his body rapidly dissipated. After 2 rolls, the pugilist regained control of his body, pushed off with his legs, and plummeted downwards. With a thud, the pugilist broke free of the telekinetic cage that had bound him, landing calmly on the ground. At the same time, another true pugilist appeared before a mind-eater, swinging his sword from right to left. Amidst the flashing energy sparks, he clenched his fist, and his power fist smashed into the mind-eater's abdomen. As the mind-eater swayed and fell backward, a black figure soared into the air. The pugilist swung his psionic greatsword, pouring all his strength into a downward, diagonal slash from left to right. Accompanied by dazzling psionic light, the blade diagonally split the mind-eater's entire torso in half. The guard members cooperated seamlessly. The strongest, with the best defensive techniques, handled frontal assaults, the most powerful delivered fierce attacks to severely wound the brain eaters, and finally, the most perceptive swordsmen seized opportunities to deliver the killing blow. The pugilists' bodies endured psionic attacks. The war masks imbued them with a tenacious will, allowing them to resist neurotoxins. In an instant, 5 mind-eaters were jointly killed by the guard members. They encircled their lord, forming a solid wall. Within the wall, amidst the swarm of worms, glowing parasitic eyes allowed him to perceive everything in the dim corridor. The corridor, the order shadows, everything transformed into distorted electromagnetic waves and light. The overseer's electromagnetic spectrum vision allowed him to see, from a supernatural perspective, the energy waves shimmering on the power sword, the supernatural fluctuations emanating from the psionic greatsword. He suddenly raised his arm, and an invisible shockwave swept through the surroundings. The Order Shadow's personal energy shields crackled, and they trembled as if struck by lightning. The hands gripping the psionic greatswords felt as if they had grasped scorching hot irons. Thierry sheathed his psionic greatsword at his waist and loudly issued orders through his helmet's internal communicator. Deactivate personal energy shields, sheath psionic greatswords. The shimmering light of the psionic greatswords rapidly faded, and the Order Shadows, wielding power swords, stood ready. Thierry held a power sword wreathed in blue light. This sword, forged by Vulcan, was wider and thicker, with a blade 1.5 times the width of a normal sword at the tip. Other Order Shadows who received similar great swords would wield such weapons with both hands. But the Weapon Master wielded it effortlessly with one hand. The Weapon Master swung his greatsword and swiftly charged towards Sloth. Worms writhed in clusters, and the Staff of Necrosis was brandished. On the staff's curved, claw-like branches, malevolent runes emitted an eerie, chilling aura. Stab, stab, stab. The malevolent, eerie force field collided with the decomposition force field, emitting a strange grinding sound. At the same time, Sloth's left arm instantly elongated, lunging like a giant python towards Thierry's waist. Thierry was prepared. He rolled to his left, evading the tentacle, and at the same time, punched Sloth in the head. With a sound like a bursting balloon, large clumps of worms were scattered. The parasitic eye tumbled through the air, a glint of surprise in its depths. The worms tumbled in the air, gathering into a mass, then suddenly sprang up, enveloped the parasitic eye, and merged into his right arm. The Staff of Necrosis suddenly elongated and smashed towards Thierry. The Weapon Master, landing, immediately sprang up, evading the staff's attack. He rolled and swung his greatsword, slashing at Sloth. With a tearing sound, the decomposition force field ripped through the shroud-like cape, sweeping across a mass of worms. The worms scattered as if startled, then recoagulated into a mass. The Weapon Master wielded his blade, expertly controlling the sword with extraordinary swordsmanship, leaving numerous sword wounds on Sloth's body in an instant. Sloth's body of worms writhed madly. Never had he been so disheveled since his promotion to Overseer. He had thought that after unleashing his attack and scattering the Order Shadow's fleet, he could calmly pilot his ship away. But he hadn't expected the enemy to invade his ship and be so tenacious. If he delayed any longer, once the other ships converged, it would be difficult for him to escape, and he would lose a large amount of assets. Overseer Sloth's massive cluster of worms writhed madly, and the vocalizer embedded within his body extended. The uneven metal sphere translated the viscous grinding sound of the worm man into the Dun language. Killer brains, I order you to immediately kill the Order shadows. Aliens surging from the depths of the ship immediately launched a frenzied attack on the Order shadows. Unlike their usual calm observation from behind the front lines, the overlords roared as they charged at the aliens. A dozen aliens raised their crab-like pincers, and gray-green psionic flames, like flamethrowers, spewed forth scorching molten streams. The pugilists met them head-on, absolutely refusing to allow the aliens to disturb their lord. The fiery molten streams struck the gauze-like woven shields, and most of the molten streams were deflected towards the obsidian walls on either side, crackling and charring the walls black. The pugilists' steps did not falter, and specks of flame coiled around their black power armor. They rushed before the aliens and slashed their swords at the crab pincers. Waves of alien attacks, one after another, crashed against the pugilists' rock-solid defense line, only to be destroyed repeatedly. Despite suppressing Sloth, Thierry frowned. He hadn't inflicted any substantial damage on the opponent, his only achievement being the destruction of a large portion of the necrotic cape. He remembered the Black Emperor's words: his only chance of victory was to stuff a grenade into Sloth's body. The weapon master's left hand fumbled for a grenade at his waist, staring at Sloth, looking for an opportunity. His blade spun rapidly, and amidst a series of impacts, his eyes suddenly narrowed. Sloth's legs, within the necrotic cape, contracted into a single strand, his upper body swelled, and a mass of worms slammed into the obsidian ceiling. The parasitic eye coldly locked onto the black armor warriors below, pouncing down like a giant python hunting its prey. As the weapon master moved sideways, he simultaneously flicked his power sword, the blade acting like a rain, missing the staff of necrosis, and applying force from the opposite direction. The Gekua AF style sent Sloth hurtling forward due to inertia. Before he could react, the blade smoothly cut open his body. The decomposition force field shrieked as it sliced open his abdomen, scattering worms. Thierry seized the opportunity, pulled the pin, and threw the armor-piercing grenade into Sloth's body. The worms tumbled and surged, then with a loud bang, clusters of worms scattered with crackling sounds. Thierry retreated. He saw clearly that the grenade had not detonated within Sloth's body. A mass of worms in his chest caved in, enveloping the grenade. He had avoided the attack at the cost of partial injury. Sloth's vitality is too tenacious, almost immortal. As my lord said, even destroying him with a grenade is a result I can only achieve by going all out. As Thierry pondered, a familiar, authoritative voice suddenly sounded behind him. The voice was in the Dun language and came from Howard Fend. Extension and retraction are forbidden here. The judge raised his hand and pushed forward, speaking with authority. Overseer Sloth's vocalizer let out a scoff, and his malevolent will spread out. The next instant, his body trembled violently. The overseer let out a shriek, horrified to discover that his psionic countermeasure had no effect whatsoever. How is this possible? The overseer suddenly felt that his body, which could freely writhe and shapeshift, was unresponsive. The worms were constrained by some invisible force within a certain range. Each cluster of worms coalesced into exactly the same shape as before. He struggled to break free of the invisible bonds, but the worms moved slower and slower. Damn it! I've expended too much power before. He looked in horror at the Order shadow who raised his arm and aimed it at him. Overseer Sloth heard the other party speak in an authoritative tone, in a language he completely failed to understand, as an extremely viscous, transparent liquid flowed and tightly enveloped his body. Layer upon layer of walls tightly wrapped around each worm. Overseer Sloth's body solidified, and he thought with horror and bewilderment. I've been imprisoned. I've actually been imprisoned. Thierry gazed at Sloth, who was encased in a giant amber, and said to Howard, who had come to his side. As my lord said, you deal with him much more easily than I can. No, Howard shook his head and said, without you depleting his power earlier, I wouldn't have been able to imprison him so easily. He judged from the fact that the worms could still move within a certain range earlier that his prohibition could only exert a certain degree of suppression on the overseer in his full power, not completely restrict him. He had to deplete a certain amount of the opponent's power to deal with him. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And please support the author by link in description. Chapter 526. Luther, who defied Lion's orders, is the most valuable target for corruption. Nation of Disorder, 4th Spatial Layer. Ning Lu sat high on his throne in the depths of the black mist, listening to the reports from his four lords. That's how it is, Thierry Vieira sighed, the grenade I threw failed to detonate inside him. Ning Lu recalled the scene of Alpharius leading his forces in a great battle against Sloth. He thought of the Alpha Legion's librarian, Ruker, who launched a psionic attack at the cost of his life. Sloth paused for a moment, giving Alpharius the opportunity to throw the armor-piercing grenade into his body. Sacrificing a librarian is a bit too costly. There are other weapons that can achieve the same effect. He thought of this and then spoke. A glass grenade, it will create an opportunity. Thierry understood. My lord, do you mean that when the warp brain worms collide with the worm men, they will be in a stalemate? Howard Fenn's eyes lit up at the words. If so, he would be able to hunt Sloth more calmly and offer him to the Black Emperor. As he pondered, he continued his report, following the Night Lord's words. After I captured Sloth with the power you granted me, the tech sergeants discovered advanced technology, vastly different from human technology, within the disc-shaped ship. Upon hearing this, Ning Lu considered the specialties of his artisans. Ryan Ramirez, who was excavating the Ramirez-class star fort, was clearly the most suitable. I will have Ryan take over the research of Sloth's ship. We will assist the great sage in completing the handover, Howard added. After Sloth's death, the Randan aliens seemed to fall into desperate madness. We surmise that Sloth's death will result in severe punishment for them. After we withstood their frenzied attacks, we have divided, surrounded, and annihilated them. Abyss Port has resumed operations. Very good, Ning Lu nodded in satisfaction. After you have rested, expel all the aliens who have invaded the Colony Ned New district. The black mist swallowed the four lords, sending them back to their flagships docked in the four quadrants of the Ramirez-class star fort. Over the next 10+ days, Ning Lu received tens of thousands of sacrifices, including Basmimanic people, mind-eaters, bone-eaters, and other potion materials and spiritual materials, as well as Beander characteristics from various pathways. He summoned the honor guard who had passed the trials and bestowed Beander characteristics upon them. When there were still candidates to cultivate, Ning Lu would prioritize using Beander characteristics to cultivate or enhance Beanders. On one hand, his loyal descendants were people he cherished emotionally. On the other hand, Beanders were more valuable than mystical items. Mystical items created from low-sequence Beander characteristics, although possessing some mystical abilities, could mostly be replaced. Weapons crafted from hunter or warrior Beander characteristics were far inferior to those made by Vulcan. For the seer Beander characteristic, divination foci made from psionic crystal could achieve the same effect. Furthermore, mystical items created from Beander characteristics usually did not possess all the abilities of the corresponding sequence. Depending on the creator's ability, they would have one or several Beander abilities. Most of the mystical items Ning Lu possessed were like this. The blood-colored chain provided him with powerful regenerative abilities, and the divination dice could only be used for divination. Only the gauntlets corresponding to the Hand of Order could use the Beander abilities of various sequences. He guessed this was related to him being the chosen one of the Nation of Disorder, and that Justiciar and Black Emperor corresponded to the same Sephira. As one group of honor guard departed and a new group arrived, Ning Lu listened to Arsena Dun's report in his office. My lord, in accordance with your command, 8 battle groups have departed to Vostronia, Sepramundi, Tricon, and Mordian to resupply. They will then proceed through the Warp Gate to Carium Gate to await orders. The original body servant paused after his report, then continued. My lord, I believe the threat from Aqualaport should be taken seriously. Ning Lu leaned back on his black throne, looking at Arsena, whose silver hair flowed. Aqualaport. Yes, Arsena continued. The master of the astropathic choir received a distress call 15 standard days ago. The planetary governor reported that ships covered in spikes and flails destroyed the starport and invaded the surface. Aqualaport is located at the convergence of several warp routes, 5 of which led to the Vostronia star system, and 2 of which led directly to Vostronia and Sepra Mundi. Once the Randan aliens enslave the local humans, it is indeed possible for them to obtain star charts and other information, and then launch an attack on my territory. Ning Lu thought of this and decided to eliminate the potential threat before launching his counterattack. Dispatch the 12th Battle Group to accompany me to Aqualaport. The Wangquan Shadows Bridge became busy. The tech sergeants, who replaced the engine soothsayers of other legions, coordinated their attendants like conductors, following the operational rituals. Attendants, prepare the incense equipment for the ritual to appease the machine spirit. High-grade mechanics, recite the prayers and generate the current data report. Amidst the symphony of binary code, the tech sergeant's mechanical tendrils inserted into the electronic throat of the meditator guardian. With a series of flashing runes, the data crypt received new data. The warp sextant, amidst blessings, updated its data and subsequently completed its calculation plan. After observing the warp engine operating normally, the tech sergeant immediately reported to the lady captain. Captain, the engineering hall is operating normally. We can now jump to the warp. Initiate jump. Diana Bolin stroked the brain cat beside her, simultaneously issuing the order. After a journey of 4 standard weeks, the Wangquan Shadow emerged from the warp. Diana reviewed the summarized Auspex data report on the video screen, then rotated her seat to face the command throne. Lord Ning Lu, Auspex scans show a fleet within the star system. The identification codes of the warships indicate they belong to the Dark Angels. Ning Lu frowned slightly at the news. The Dark Angels. The War Council authorized me to command the war against the Randan, and I ordered the Legion detachments to gather at Carium Gate. Could it be that the proud First Legion defied my orders? Send a communication request. One black warship after another warped into the real world, gathering around the Rongguang Nuong class battleship. My lord, communication link established. Lord Ning Lu, Luther greets you. Ning Lu was instantly astonished by the voice that echoed from the comm bead. Wasn't Luther sent back to Caliban by Lionel Johnson to train new recruits? Ning Lu knew that Luther, who adopted Lion, like Lorgar Aurelian's adoptive father Corferin, was too old to undergo the full Astartes transformation surgery. He felt troubled being among the Astartes yet different from them, and he also grew jealous of Lion, who completely controlled the Great Knightly Order. In 848, Lion led the 22nd Battle Group, detaching from the Phaneos Crusade, and went to Sarosh to replace the impatient Star Hunter, overseeing the Terra officials. The High Lord refused to take a Stormbird, instead taking a Sarosh shuttle to the Indomitable Truth. When he met Lion, he activated a device, attempting to detonate the nuclear warheads loaded on the shuttle. Luther, out of jealousy, hesitated to rescue Lion. Although he eventually rescued Lion under the persuasion of librarian Zahariel, he was subsequently discovered by Lion and, along with a large number of Terra descendants, was sent to Caliban. This second in command of the Great Knightly Order, along with many Dark Angels, remained in Caliban in near exile during the ongoing Great Crusade. The only battle Luther and his followers, as well as the Terra descendants, subsequently participated in was the Battle of Zeramond, in 970. Luther supported Horus and Typhon in quelling the rebellion in Zeramond. During the celebration, after Lion arrived, he angrily reprimanded Luther for defying his order to remain stationed on Caliban and stripped him of his fleet. Luther still has a fleet now. He defied Lion's orders and acted on his own. Is it the unwillingness of being confined to Caliban? For glory. The Baron of Corruption thought, his eyes deep. Luther had thoughts of betraying Lion in the past, and he did betray him in the future. He can be corrupted, and he hasn't yet studied the chaos text seized from the Fenrisian Knights. Although he doesn't possess chaos power now, his combat strength isn't high. But Luther's overall ability is second only to a Primarch. Without him, the Dark Angels would not have reached their current scale. Ning Lu thought of Luther's outstanding abilities, and after corrupting him, the batches of new recruits who would then be corrupted, as well as the secrets of the Dark Angels that would be revealed. Luther is the most valuable target for corruption. Chapter 527. Mind Eater. It was always I who paralyzed others, but today it was the other way around. Ascalon Star System, Aqualaport. On the bridge of the Wangquan Shadow, Ning Lu, seated on the command throne, gathered his thoughts. He pressed the communication bead and spoke. We will fight together to eradicate the Xenos within the star system. After that, I will summon you. As you wish, my lord, Luther responded. After the communication disconnected, Ning Lu noticed that Diana Boland's seat had not turned back towards her console. My lord, we have a clear advantage in this battle. I hope to join the fight after we establish dominance in the void. Ning Lu keenly detected a hint of eagerness for battle in her tone. Considering that Diana was already a Sequence 6 hypnotist, possessing decent direct combat ability, he granted Diana's request. You may proceed to the surface. Diana recalled the Augur Matrix scan results she had just received. Some Xenos had landed on the surface while the Imperial warships were still doing their best to defend. The scan results showed that the intensity of the war was not high, which was perfect for her. I obey your will. The lady captain rotated her leather chair, turning back to her console. She entered the state of a spectator, observing the video screen before her with a detached perspective. Seconds later, her emotions had returned to calm, and she commanded the fleet to launch an offensive. Blazing light spears and a rain of shadow blasters filled the void, illuminating Aqualaport and piercing into the dim Hive City. The people of Hertford Hive City scattered in terror. 11-year-old Pat stumbled and ran through the loading dock, his steps uneven as he fled. More painful than hunger and weakness were the colors around him. Red and black filled his eyes. Countless dazzling white lights, each representing a person's fear. The entire city was trembling. No, it was the entire world. A dark light suddenly gleamed in Pat's eyes. He immediately broke into a frantic sprint, running in the opposite direction. Pat had seen the dark light before, followed by a momentary mental freeze and body stiffness. If he hadn't recovered his mobility faster than others, and if others hadn't been closer to that evil Xeno, he would have long been a corpse, or fallen into an even more tragic situation, enslaved. Pat ran frantically, his tattered boots, much too large for his feet, were now just a few scraps of synthetic leather wrapped around them. His soul stung as he stepped on the cold metal floor of the loading dock. He bit his dry lips tightly, not daring to make a sound. Accompanied by terrified screams, a bloody red light flared behind Pat. He didn't look back, yet he could see it clearly. Pat ran a little faster, the desire to survive causing strength to erupt within him. Stumbling and staggering, he ran wildly. He didn't stop until there were no more colors around him. Leaning against a cold robot, he gasped for a few breaths. Pat immediately covered his mouth with both hands, vigilantly looking around. Seconds later, as if a fog had receded, he clearly saw the sign above. Having learned more than other workers' children since he was young, he barely recognized the letters on it. He was surprised to find that he had crossed the loading dock and run to berth number 36. Pat felt both unfamiliar and somewhat ironic. As the child of a loading dock worker's family, he would never have set foot in this area until his death. He never imagined that due to the Xeno invasion, he had actually escaped the cage of his birth. Pat stared blankly around him, and when he saw a burning aircraft, he snapped out of his daze. Those fierce guards are gone. His eyes suddenly lit up. Those damned Xenos have been here and won't come again. At least, not today. As Pat thought of this, his body lost strength, and he collapsed weakly. Curling up, he fell into an exhausted sleep. He didn't know how much time had passed when he suddenly frowned. Black, red, white. Pat jolted awake, cold sweat instantly drenching his body. He sprang from the ground and ran frantically. Pat heard a piercing shriek from the air, and he quickly rolled on the ground. He glimpsed an orange figure with a pointed beak embedded in the ground, its wings flapping against the surface. Pat ran in a panic between two aircraft wrecks, the sound of rushing wind above his head, and the hum of engines. He had no time to think, only to escape. A clatter sounded, and one orange bird-like creature after another slammed onto the ground. Pat looked up at the sky in astonishment, then saw 15 black aircraft descending from the sky. The rush of air from the opening cabin doors pushed his frail body backward, causing him to collide with something. He crossed his arms in front of him, staring forward with wide eyes. Pat saw a female officer in black armor, her golden hair tied back, falling behind her head. Her teal eyes suddenly glowed golden, and deep within her pupils, another pair of golden vertical pupils seemed to be looking at him. Pat's body flinched. He clutched his thin, tattered clothes, feeling the sharp golden light pierce through his body, as if he were being seen through. "My lady, you." His lips trembled as he cried out in the local low Gothic. He wanted to say something, it would make him feel better. Pat's words abruptly stopped. He suddenly felt the blackness surging from behind engulf the surroundings. He immediately ran in terror, and then a gentle, powerful voice sounded in his ear. Pat didn't understand the language, but a voice suddenly flashed in his mind. "Don't panic." Pat felt that the voice contained some kind of power he couldn't comprehend, but he was no longer afraid. He was no longer afraid and stopped in his tracks. Pat stared blankly at the valiant female officer, watching her move past him to confront the eerie Xeno. After Diana calmed the boy, she faced the Mind Eater. Diana suddenly felt her mind stiffen, layers upon layers of withered gray threads appearing. The hypnotist's eyes shone with golden light, and she immediately felt her mind regain clarity. The hypnotist's golden eyes narrowed, and spiritual light shot towards the Mind Eater like an arrow. The hypnotist knew that the effect of her combat hypnosis would only last for a very short time. As she used her Beyander ability, she also raised her archaeological handgun. The Mind Eater's raised, bent arm suddenly dropped, knocking an aircraft away. He only became alert when he felt a burning pain in his arm. The Mind Eater looked at his arm in confusion, as a dazzling beam of light shot towards him. The energy beam, collected from a star, struck the intersection of his vertical head and horizontal mouth. A fist-sized wound, disgusting mucus dripping onto the ground. The Mind Eater let out a shriek. It had always been his neurotoxin that numbed others, this was the first time he had been mentally paralyzed. The Mind Eater took a step, raising his arm. Suddenly, his foot slipped. His swaying body had just stabilized when another dazzling beam of light shot towards him. No longer afraid, Pat followed the female officer's figure, looking at the battlefield. He watched in astonishment as the terrifying Xeno stumbled and swayed like those drunken adult workers, walking unsteadily. Beam after beam struck the Xeno's body. He fell, slammed onto the ground. Pat stared blankly at the golden hair and straight back, muttering, "Are you a magician?" Diana heard the boy's incomprehensible local low Gothic. She didn't understand it, but as a former telepathist, she could guess the boy's astonishment. She looked at the Mind Eater lying on the ground, feeling a bit surprised herself. Having the right to read parts of the Order Shadow's reports, she remembered that only elite warriors within the Order Shadows were capable of killing a Mind Eater. She knew this was because the Mind Eater's neurotoxin would not harm her, who specialized in the mental domain. And her combat hypnosis had caused the Mind Eater's erratic behavior, while the archaeological handgun could inflict sufficient damage. Against other enemies skilled in close combat, I wouldn't have this much time. After calmly concluding, Diana was still satisfied with her current combat capabilities. Before I met Lord Ning Lu, I never imagined I would possess such abilities. Thank you, Lord Ning Lu, for bestowing such power upon me. As Diana was pondering, a gray figure suddenly flashed across her left eye. Her eyes sparkled, and she looked to her front left. Chapter 528. Luther, Zahariel, will psychic abilities be suppressed? Aqualaport, starport docking area. Diana Boland's eyes sparkled, her sharp gaze sweeping around. The hypnotist's sight settled on the shadow of a wrecked aircraft. She saw a figure in a faded cloak, holding a scepter. Diana immediately recognized that the figure walking in the shadows was Sloth. She hadn't expected to encounter Sloth. Although she had just killed a powerful mind-eater, Diana knew that Sloth was not someone she could kill. Combat hypnosis would immediately fail once it posed a direct threat to the target. The hypnotist only wanted to delay Sloth's escape until reinforcements arrived. From the Black Emperor's provided data and combat reports, she knew that Sloth would pose a significant threat once he infiltrated this world. Diana did not attack. She raised her hand and pressed the rune on her suite, and the optical camouflage cloak activated. Her suite was personally crafted for her by Malevolus. Based on the Lady Captain model, the suite maintained outstanding mobility, sacrificing the dual scythes and power sword. The optical camouflage cloak, combined with Space Dwarf shield weaving technology, greatly enhanced its ability to conceal her whereabouts, making her difficult to target. At the same time, the non-evolvable modules of the Lady Captain model were replaced with a personal adaptive evolution system. Diana pressed her throat communicator and whispered. Sloth detected, requesting backup. She marked the image captured by the scrying box embedded in her mask on the tactical network. Diana ran in long strides. The hypnotist's speed far surpassed that of an ordinary person. Even the reinforced senior generals of the Solar Auxilia couldn't match her speed. The hypnotist rapidly closed the distance with Sloth, and after a dozen seconds, the distance was within 30 meters. Sloth was completely unaware. The optical camouflage cloak entirely obscured the existence of the black power armor suite. His parasitic eyes and evil will were equally oblivious. The hypnotist's psychic energy spread towards Sloth, grasping his evil mind. The hypnotist created a psychological blind spot in Sloth's thoughts, allowing her to remain completely hidden in the dark, in a dead zone of his consciousness. The hypnotist had walked past the ship's crew members, and they had been completely unable to see her, but Diana cautiously did not get too close to Sloth. She knew that her psychological invisibility nearly eliminated her presence, placing her in a blind spot of attention. Once interaction became stronger, she would inevitably be exposed. The hypnotist could feel Sloth's powerful evil will, only slightly lower than that of Ning Lu, Malin Ascala, Arsena Dunn, and Thomas, among a few others. Any accidental touch would immediately reveal her. The newly appointed Inspector Sloth ran swiftly through the shadows. He had intended to raid Aqualaport, plunder resources, and build his own spaceship. He had sent out all his servants to collect resources. Now, he gradually felt that things were getting out of his control. His servants had not returned on time, and more enemies were appearing. He decided to find a place to hide first and look for an opportunity to leave. The roar of an engine sounded overhead, but he paid it no mind. Foolish enemies would not discover him. Diana, following Sloth's footsteps, looked up at the sky. She discovered that the arriving reinforcements were black stormbirds, but they belonged not to the Order Shadows, but to the Dark Angels. The Lady Captain immediately recalled that the Order Shadows and the Dark Angels partially shared each other's tactical networks. Inside the Stormbird, Luther did not immediately issue an attack order. He looked at Zahariel opposite him, awaiting the librarian's psychic probing results. Suddenly, Zahariel painfully fell from his seat. He knelt on one knee, his body convulsing. Zahariel, what's wrong? Luther asked in surprise, feeling that Zahariel was very weak. This puzzled him greatly. Zahariel was the Dark Angel's most powerful librarian, the only one besides Lion King who had killed a lion beast. Luther helped up Zahariel, who was much taller than him. Having undergone only partial transformation surgery, he was noticeably smaller than other Dark Angels. Zahariel's retching stopped after a few seconds, and he said painfully, "Sir, that, Xenos, can counter psychic abilities." "Then don't use your psychic abilities." Luther drew the power sword from his waist. "We'll go down and kill the Xenos like we hunt a giant beast." "Yes, sir." Zahariel drew his chainsword and followed Luther towards the hatch. The parasitic eyes rotated, encased in wriggling insects. Inspector Sloth looked in astonishment at the warriors in black power armor leaping from the sky. How did they find me? Inspector Sloth did not stop. His right arm swung and extended, and his scepter shot out a necrotic beam. The corrupt beam struck the armor of a dark angel, instantly melting the power armor. Necrotic fluid crackled, rapidly corroding the Astarte's superhuman body. A fist-sized wound immediately appeared on the dark angel's chest, cells secreted by the Luraman organ engaged in a fierce battle with the necrotic fluid. As he staggered, two figures swiftly swept past him. Luther and Zahariel launched a knightly charge from both sides, their longswords carving an arc. Luther's power sword was faster than Zahariel's, its flashing light tore through the tattered cloak, and a large mass of wriggling worms was ripped apart with a crackling sound. Zahariel's lion sword followed closely, a powerful weapon forged from the sharp teeth of the lion beast he had slain. Worms were severed by the longsword. Blue-white light pierced Sloth's chest, and the longsword cut the worm man in half at the waist. Just as Luther and Zahariel both thought they had killed the evil Xenos, the scattered masses of worms suddenly sprang up, grabbing at them like two tentacles. The worm tentacles grabbed Zahariel's helmet. Bacteria secreted by the necrotic fluid, carrying acid, dissolved the metal at a molecular level. The helmet dissolved like foam, revealing Zahariel's resolute face. Just then, the two worm tentacles suddenly slipped off. A crisp, clear female voice sounded in Zahariel's communication earpiece. External attacks won't kill him, unless a grenade is thrown inside his body. The Xenos can suppress psychic abilities. How did she do it? The worm arms slapped the pyrocrete alloy ground, leaving two deep pits. The parasitic eyes flashed with evil light. Inspector Sloth had broken free from combat hypnosis. His eyes flickered, and he suddenly raised his scepter. A necrotic ray shot towards Diana's hiding place. The hypnotist had anticipated her exposure when she rescued the two dark angels. Golden, dragon scales emerged from her body, filling the gaps between her body and the suite. With a crackling, ear-splitting tearing sound, the Lord Hunter suite, crafted from top-grade pyrocrete alloy, was pierced through. Necrotic fluid splashed onto the dragon scales, instantly corroding the shining golden scales. The fluid continued to spread, hitting newly generated dragon scales. The hypnotist's psychic energy rapidly depleted, and layers of dragon scales continuously regenerated. Zahariel's eyes flickered. He saw a worm arm wrapped around Luther's waist, and the power armor was dissolving. The librarian's gaze passed through the tattered necrotic cloak, through masses of worms. He saw masses of plump worms inside the Xenos' body, different from its exterior, and the evil energy enveloping them. Zahariel's chest felt like it was on fire, every bone and muscle in his body ached, and a bone-chilling cold swept through him. She's right, that Xenos can only be killed from the inside. Zahariel ignored the pain throughout his body and calmly said to Luther, "Sir, I will create an opportunity for you." He felt that releasing a psychic attack would lead to a painful death, but now there was no other choice. Just as Zahariel was about to desperately launch a psychic attack, he suddenly saw a flashing light of teleportation. Zahariel saw a figure taller than the Lion King emerge from the light. Lord Ning Lu. The Baron of Corruption raised his right hand, psychic energy spread, and an invisible force surged. The wriggling masses of worms, their expanding and contracting will, were twisted. Inspector Sloth discovered with horror that his body uncontrollably condensed into a sphere. Ning Lu infused psychic energy into his power fist. Extremely viscous transparent liquid wrapped the wriggling mass of worms layer after layer. Luther felt the worm tentacles loosen, and then saw a giant amber, binding the worm sphere within it, looking at Zahariel in confusion. The librarian read his meaning in his eyes. "Didn't you say psychic abilities would be suppressed?" Chapter 529. Lion, you no longer need to struggle to reconcile with your sons. On the Wangquan Shadow, Primarch office. Luther, I salute Gene Seed Primarch, Lord Ning Lu, and thank you for your timely intervention in slaying the Xenos. Luther, with his neat black hair, resolute face, and thick beard, spoke respectfully. A golden light flashed in his mind, and the scene of the amber imprisoning Sloth appeared in his thoughts. Ning Lu looked at Luther with scrutiny. The Gene Seed Primarch keenly noticed the suppressed emotions, sorrow, and anxiety hidden in his eyes that troubled him. He looked weathered, much older than his modified body. Luther was Lionel Johnson's de facto adoptive father, though they never addressed each other as father and son. He named Lionel Johnson, which in Calibanite meant, Lion King, son of the forest. Luther, as the most renowned hero among his peers, would have been the greatest hero in any era of Caliban, except for this one. He had vanquished more great beasts than anyone, except for Lionel Johnson. Luther and Lionel Johnson led expeditions against great beasts together, but at the end, Lionel Johnson received all the glory. Between them, they were adoptive father and son, and also brothers who fought side by side. They were once inseparable, but now they were estranged, like strangers. Nominally the deputy commander of the Dark Angels, he was only responsible for new recruit training. He led the Astartes, yet he himself had only undergone partial genetic modification. Ning Lu's pupils constricted, he had found the breakthrough point to corrosion, Luther. Luther yearns for powerful strength. He has secretly hoarded chaotic texts from the Knights of Sirius. As Ning Lu pondered, another Dark Angel spoke. Zahariel salutes you and thanks you for your assistance. Ning Lu turned his gaze to Zahariel, his eyes lingering for a moment on the special longsword at his waist. The Lion King's sword. After Zahariel killed the Lion King beast and avenged his mentor Amatus, he dug out the beast's sharp teeth. He earned the respect of all the knights and the friendship of Lionel Johnson, who personally forged this Lion King's sword for him. Ning Lu then thought of his cousin, Nemiel, who would later be killed by Lionel Johnson's flying head punch. Who would have thought that Nemiel, who denounced Lionel Johnson for violating Huang Laohan's ban on using psychers at the Council of Nicaea, had once conspired with others to assassinate him when he arrived on Caliban. It was Zahariel who stopped them. Thinking of Zahariel and Nemiel, Ning Lu couldn't help but reflect on their future fates with a sigh. Zahariel, once a loyal man, personally tested by Huang Laohan, would become one of the first fallen angels in the future. Nemiel, who led the Inner Circle Knights in an assassination attempt on Huang Laohan, became his loyal follower, and his head was even blown off defending his orders. What a shocking reversal, a true irony of fate. The Gene Seed Primarch's lips curved into a smile, gathering his thoughts. From his eyes and demeanor, he saw the pent-up frustration of exile. Zahariel became a Dark Angel but never got a chance to prove himself. The only operation he participated in was the Sorosh incident, where he convinced Luther and was the one who threw the nuclear bomb out of the unyielding truth. He played a decisive role in the Sorosh incident, yet he was still ruthlessly exiled and ended his short 2-year Great Crusade because he served as Luther's adjutant. Ning Lu thought of Zahariel's adherence to Caliban's supremacy. He would rationally assess the situation and not cling to loyalty to Lionel Johnson, and he would become a fallen angel. He can be corroded even more easily than Balsa Kucheri. Zahariel's abilities, however, are far more powerful than Balsa Kucheri and most other Legion librarians. His psychic talent is quite special. He is a man esteemed by both Lionel Johnson and Luther, the only Dark Angel Lionel Johnson has ever called a hero and a peer. My lord, Luther's eyes flickered, and he spoke the carefully crafted words to the Gene Seed Primarch. Caliban was invaded by Xenos, and I led my fleet in pursuit. Along the way, I received a distress signal via astropath from the governor of Aqualaport, and thus came to assist. Ning Lu nodded slightly, not probing Luther's explanation. While possible, it is not your primary reason for being here. You are still unwilling to be a mere bystander of the Great Crusade, confined to Caliban teaching new recruits. The Northern Imperium is under invasion, so your actions will not attract attention. His eyes narrowed, and he thought playfully. There's no need for such secretive actions. I can give you everything you desire. Opportunities for glory, the power you crave, even the Caliban you wish to protect. I will give it all to you. Cold sweat beaded on Luther's forehead. Just as he felt uneasy, Ning Lu spoke. The scale of the Xenos' invasion of the Imperium is unprecedented. Caliban needs fleet protection. The Gene Seed Primarch deliberately paused for a moment, and seeing the suppressed frustration in the depths of Luther and Zahariel's dimmed eyes, he smiled and said, I will provide you with an opportunity. You can board the Wangquan Shadow and accompany me. I welcome the Dark Angels to join. Ning Lu said with a smile, thinking to himself. However many you have, I want them all. 10,000 is not too few, tens of thousands are not too many. Luther and Zahariel's eyes lit up, and they said in unison. Thank you, my lord. We will not fail to live up to your trust. Ning Lu watched their retreating figures, a smile playing on his lips. Lionel Johnson, since you despise them, why don't I, out of kindness, take your sons? He thought of Lionel Johnson's gentle, fatherly demeanor when he reconciled with the fallen angels 10 millennia later. With a patience he would not possess now, he tolerated the sons who shot at him, the sons who swung swords at him. He allowed his sons not to pledge loyalty to him, he accepted his sons' demands, and swore an oath to him. Lionel Johnson, with your hair and beard all white, an old man, you still have to struggle so hard to reconcile with your sons. Now, you don't have to be so tired. You're welcome, Lionel Johnson. After Ning Lu decided to tirelessly do a good deed that benefited both himself and others, and left no name, he instructed Arsena Dun, who stood by his side. Settle the Dark Angels, let them all get comfortable on the Wangquan Shadow. Pay special attention to these names: Zabriel, Afikar, Librarian Bevidin. Ning Lu listed dozens of highly capable individuals among the fallen angels, but did not include high-ranking figures such as Marier Astellan, Cipher, and Israfil. They had not met him with Luther, presumably remaining on Caliban. Ning Lu was not worried about missing them, as long as he, corroded, Luther, the central figure, most of the fallen angels and future new recruits would fall under his control. As Ning Lu pondered, Luther and Zahariel boarded the shuttle. Luther sat in a comfortable seat, and after nearly 2 decades of suppressed emotions, he smiled and said to Zahariel, who sat opposite him. Zahariel, our adventure was successful, better than the best-case scenario we imagined. Zahariel looked at Lord Luther, knowing the pressure the other party bore. All of Lord Luther's followers had been exiled back to Caliban, watching their former comrades follow the Lion King into the stars and earn glory. Lord Luther had always been looking for a way out, and now he finally got his wish. My lord, I hope the glory we win will earn the Lion King's forgiveness. Zahariel saw the shadow in Luther's eyes and immediately regretted his ill-timed words. He quickly brought up another topic that Luther would care about. Lord Ning Lu possesses a unique and powerful strength. That lady captain, she can use psychic attacks on the worm men, and the golden scales on her body have stronger defenses than power armor. I have never seen such abilities. I think, Zahariel mused, stating his guess. Her power might come from Lord Ning Lu. Luther's eyes lit up. If he could obtain such power, even without completing all genetic modifications, he could still exert authority over all Dark Angels. Even 11 standard days later, the 2 fleets set sail. 3,300 Dark Angels among Luther's followers did not return to Caliban, they boarded the Wangquan Shadow. Chapter 530, Corrupting 2 people at once. I don't even know who made me digest the potion. On the worthy shadow, in the Primarch office, Ning Lu asked Luther with concern, are the Dark Angels all settled in? Thank you for your concern, Lord, Luther said gratefully. We are honored to receive the same treatment as your honor guard. Ning Lu's gaze swept over Zahariel, the librarian of the 1st Legion, Balsa Kuturi, the librarian of the 19th Legion, and Alistair Rocha, the captain, then he smiled and spoke. Today, I want to share a skill I've learned with you. It's called War Mask, and it's a technique for tempering one's will. All 4 of them were his targets for corrosion, with Luther being the primary one. Ning Lu knew that Luther's greatest desire was power, so he naturally had to approach it from that angle. He wouldn't grant the potion to Luther until he was completely loyal, but he still had other abilities he controlled, and War Mask was one of them. After mastering this technique, you will be able to transform your anger into strength while maintaining a calm mind. Ning Lu guided the four of them to begin tempering their minds and mastering the war mask. 33 ship standard days later, on the Primarch's private training deck, Ning Lu stood with his arms crossed, watching the Astartes from the 1st Legion and 19th Legion facing each other in pairs on the deck. Luther and Alistair, Zahariel and Balsa. Ning Lu's gaze first fell on the two librarians. Zahariel wasn't using his lion's sword, he wielded a chainsword, which bit into Balsa's weapon with a continuous shriek. Gears peeled off, and sparks flew. Zahariel's eyes flashed, the strength he drew from his anger made his power advantage increasingly obvious. Balsa bent his knees slightly, and before he was overwhelmed, he quickly cut forward, thrusting low. Zahariel's sword edge turned, blocking the attack. They've touched the door of the war mask. After the Gene Seed Primarch gave his assessment, he shifted his gaze to the other side. The explosive clang of two weapons colliding echoed across the entire training deck. Luther let out a restrained roar of excitement, the chainsword in his hand, like a pumping piston, repelled Alistair. This was the first time he had gained an advantage in a duel against a true Astartes, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. He no longer needed to quickly defeat the Dark Angels with skill to mask the fact that he had no advantage in strength or speed. Two hearts pumped powerfully, and adrenaline surged. Luther charged directly at Alistair like a knight launching a cavalry charge. Alistair, with dark eyes, felt his blood circulating rapidly through his body. He swiftly stepped to the side, avoiding a direct collision. As they crossed, Alistair suddenly spun around, extending his sharp claws and striking at the back of Luther's head. They have both mastered the war mask, but they use it differently, with completely different approaches. Luther converts anger into physical strength to compensate for his shortcomings. Alistair further enhances his agility advantage. As Ning Lu pondered, the Knight of Caliban and the Crow from Terra engaged in a swift exchange. Sword edges were sharp, and claws shrieked. A series of thoughts flashed through Luther's mind. Lion and Zahariel killed the lion beast. He didn't find the beast, he lost the chance to win glory. He led the beast crusade, but received no praise. He was the deputy commander, yet he could only remain confined to Caliban. Luther's body was boiling, his anger needed release. He swung a punch with extreme calm, striking Alistair's arm. With a crisp sound, Alistair's arm bent and broke. Luther's longsword pointed directly at Alistair's throat, the blade reflecting, making his face appear even paler. Luther retracted his sword and said to Alistair with a smile, "This was a thrilling duel. The name, Crow, is indeed well deserved. Lord, your swordsmanship is the strongest I've seen, besides Lord Ning Lu," Alistair praised. "This is all thanks to Lord Ning Lu's guidance." After speaking, he turned towards Ning Lu. When the Shadow Lord gave the order, he hadn't expected to receive personal instruction from Lord Ning Lu. Even more, he hadn't expected to be taught the war mask technique and possess his current combat power. Recalling the battle with Luther, he would have been quickly defeated after the engagement. Luther also turned to Ning Lu with Alistair. The Gene Seed Primarch not only gave him the opportunity to win glory but also taught him combat techniques to enhance his strength. "Thank you for your guidance, Lord." Ning Lu suddenly felt his spirituality surge, as if stars were exploding within him. Everything before him transformed into threads, the red-gold interwoven threads of weapons, the golden structural lines of the deck and walls. He even saw, from a supernatural perspective, the lines of force when Zahariel and Balsa swung their weapons during their clash. He could even perceive their physical trajectories. After a few seconds, the threads faded. Ning Lu felt his body, mind, and spirit become purer. His spirituality was more abundant, and he thought to himself, "I have completely digested the potion and become a true corruption baron. I will grant you even more abilities." Ning Lu said meaningfully, scrutinizing the two people before him, and wondered with confusion. Was it Luther, or Alistair, who was corroded by me completing the digestion? He had specifically met Luther's needs, while Alistair had been following him for some time, nearing complete corrosion. Thank you, Lord. The Gene Seed Primarch watched Luther and Alistair, taking in their admiring gazes, the subtle changes in their respectful tones, and everything else. After a moment, he drew a conclusion. They have both been corroded by me. Ning Lu thought with delight. Corrupting two people at once, I didn't even know who made me digest the potion. He looked at the two with satisfaction. Open black lens bracket. Alistair's combat power is formidable. Although Luther's combat power is not top tier, his other abilities are outstanding, making him arguably the best beneath the Primarch. During the grand birthday celebration, most of the 30,000 people in Caliban were his followers, and there will be batches of new recruits he trains over the next 140 years. Close black lens bracket. Ning Lu's lips curved into a proud smile as he thought. Now, they will all be mine. As Ning Lu pondered, Zahariel, with a perfectly angled and precise thrust, broke through Balsa's defense. Excellent, Ning Lu applauded and praised. Zahariel and Balsa, you have entered the door of the war mask. Luther and Alistair, you have mastered the techniques I taught you. In 10 minutes, come to my office, I have new techniques to impart to you. Zahariel and Balsa looked enviously at Luther and Alistair, resolving to practice the war mask even harder. Ning Lu casually left the Jushin spear on the training deck and then returned to his office. With a thought, he arrived in the Nation of Disorder. Stepping into it, he immediately felt the 7th spatial layer of the Nation of Disorder open as expected. He didn't investigate it, going directly to the 1st spatial layer. The Gene Seed Primarch's consciousness spread outwards, covering the entire world. The 2nd spatial layer was already a self-cycling, complete world, a world constructed from spirituality. Hive giant rats as tall as a person scurried through foul sewers, and on both sides of the passages were thorn crystals stained with blood. Prism worms crawled around Oviga's eyes, and chemical dogs crawled out of Vostronia's chemical solution. Rapeseed swayed in the wind in the farmlands, and ginkgo leaves rustled in the mountains. After spending a long time constructing it, the 2nd spatial layer was already able to allow most of the plants and animals from low-sequence potion ingredients of various pathways to reproduce here. Ning Lu, with a thought, came beside a hive giant rat and raised his hand to pinch its neck. Moments later, he brought the lawyer and secret supplicant potions before the space monkey. Although Luther was eager for power, and the warrior could satisfy his needs the fastest, considering his ambition, Ning Lu still chose the lawyer from his own pathway for him. Once he advanced to a high sequence and could exert influence on his pathway, he could ensure Luther's loyalty. Ning Lu also believed that during his time serving by his side, he would complete the digestion, and after advancing to barbarian, his demands would naturally be met. Considering the crow's fighting style, he chose the secret supplicant, which corresponded to the shadow ascetic, who would have the ability to hide in shadows in the future. After obtaining the 2 vials of potion, Ning Lu immediately returned to the real world. Moments later, Luther and Alistair, filled with excitement and anticipation, walked into the Primarch office. Ning Lu walked in front of the two, spread his hands, revealing the potions in his palms. Drink them. Luther and Alistair curiously looked at the 2 vials of dark and black-red potion. Seeing that Lord Ning Lu had no intention of explaining, they picked up the potions and drank them down. Countless pieces of information flooded into Luther's mind. Numerous legal texts like the Monarch's Iron Law leapt in his brain. Alistair looked at Lord Ning Lu with awe. He felt that the Lord before him was bound by the laws of reality, and he was far more majestic than the Glory Queen-class battleship he was on. Ning Lu conveyed the common knowledge they needed to know through telepathy. 2 minutes later, Luther was the first to reign in his overflowing power. He performed a knight's salute, swearing an oath to his liege. Thank you for the bestowal, Lord. I will be your loyal knight, fulfilling all your commands. Then came Alistair. He knelt on the ground. Thank you for your bestowal, Lord. I will carry out your will, whatever you command, I shall fulfill. Ning Lu nodded in satisfaction. I accept your fealty. After the two left, he had a thought and once again arrived in the Nation of Disorder. Chapter 531, The Seventh Layer of Space, the Black Emperor's Prison. After entering the Nation of Disorder, Ning Lu first went to the Blasphemy Stone slab to browse the other half of the Sequence 6 potion formula that had just been unlocked. As his gaze swept over the Twilight Giant pathway, when he looked at the Sequence 6 Dawn Paladin potion formula, he noticed that one of the main ingredients was the metallic outer skin of the Basmimanic people. A major characteristic of the Dawn Paladin is the Dawn armor, with its outstanding defense. The metallic outer skin of the Basmimanic people has super strong defense, which is quite fitting. With a thought, Ning Lu arrived at the fourth layer of space. His spirituality spread, touching Thierry Vieira's spiritual light sphere. Seeing that Thierry was alone, he formed the message he wanted to convey in his mind and, through a subtle connection, transmitted it to the light sphere. In Thierry's mind, countless light years away, black mist suddenly rose. He saw the majestic Black Emperor enthroned, and a solemn voice resounded, "Remove your armor and pray to me." "As you command, my lord." Thierry immediately went to his captain's quarters, removed his armor suit, and put on a black robe with a metal-colored longsword embroidered on the chest. Then, he knelt on the altar in his quarters, clasped his hands in a reverse grip, performed a ritual, and chanted in Dun language. "The Black Emperor of the Order Shadows. ... I implore your gaze. I implore your listening." Quote. As he chanted the second time, black mist rose, engulfing him. Entering the mysterious country shrouded in black mist, Thierry bowed. "My lord, drink it." As the solemn voice resounded, Thierry saw the potion floating before him. The potion was overall dim, but points of light continuously emerged from it. He immediately picked up the potion and drank it down. Then, he felt as if he had swallowed a pot of boiling nutrient paste, his body burning. Thierry activated his psychic vision, observing himself. He saw the bright white of his extraordinary body glowing with dazzling light from within. Light emanated from every part of his body, expanding his physique. Thierry immediately understood why the Black Emperor wanted him to remove his armor, because his body was growing. Unlike during the modification surgery, where his body gradually enlarged, his body swelled in an instant. Ning Lu watched Thierry's body grow taller and stronger at a visible speed. In an instant, his somewhat loose black robe was torn apart, hanging on his body, barely covering his vital parts. Dozens of seconds later, the development of the newly promoted Dawn Paladin finally ended. The Gene Seed Primarch's eyes swept over him, measuring the Dawn Paladin's height. 3 meters tall. Not far from what I expected. Even among the tall Astartes fire lizards, none can match Thierry. Even an ordinary person, upon becoming a Dawn Paladin, would become a giant, at least 2 meters tall. In terms of his height, robustness, strength, and defense, he can be considered the foremost person below a Primarch. Ning Lu looked at Thierry, who was collecting his overflowing spiritual power and seemed a bit embarrassed, and couldn't help but smile. Now, facing Sloth again, apart from the inspector, nothing else can harm you. He was about to send Thierry back to the blade when he suddenly remembered his original Lord Hunter suite. Although Thierry hadn't worn it for long, the intensity of the battles he experienced far exceeded that of ordinary Lord Hunters, and any Astartes wearing it would undoubtedly grow into an elite warrior in a short time. You go to Malavalis and order a new set. The original set, grant it to someone suitable. Ning Lu remembered that in the future Necromunda, someone would fortunately discover a Lord Hunter suite left by a deceased person. After he'd put it on, the Lord Hunter suite immediately modified his body comprehensively based on the data of the previous owner stored in its adaptive system. He quickly grew into a strong person within a few days, rising in the Hive City. "As you command, my lord." Thierry breathed a sigh of relief, allowing the black mist to engulf his body. After sending Thierry back to the blade, Ning Lu immediately had a thought and arrived at the newly opened 7th layer of space. As soon as he stepped into this place, the Gene Seed Primarch's vision was filled with countless ropes of various shapes. Spiderweb-like threads covered the sky, thick chains like giant pythons swayed like tentacles on the ground, and electric snakes flashing with electric light swam around. The Baron of Corruption gazed around, and through the vision of the lines of rules, his eyes deciphered each rope. The chains in the Baron of Corruption's vision instantly transformed into countless lines of rules of different colors and thicknesses, twisted and entangled together, like a snake's nest with countless small snakes wriggling. Lines of rules, forming, ropes. The previous spaces only presented one aspect of opening a sequence, now it is composed of two aspects. The Baron of Corruption's eyes were deep, he stepped forward with his hands behind his back. His body collided with an electric snake in front of him. He saw blue-green lines of rules rising, swirling around, seemingly about to pounce on him. There were also white threads, like spider silk, covering him like a fishing net. Ning Lu did not move, the lightning and spiderwebs dispersed on their own before touching his body. Ning Lu stopped, deep in thought. The function of ropes is to bind, and the lines of rules that compose them are the manifestation of rules. So, the function of this layer is. With a thought, he arrived at the first layer of space. The palaces in the black mist each stored different potion ingredients. Ning Lu went directly to a palace where 3 worm men were bound in golden amber. He cautiously chose the one captured by Chesney. This was the weakest of the 3 sloths. Ning Lu raised his hand, grabbed the huge amber, and once again arrived at the 7th layer of space. He casually threw out the amber, and at the same time, raised his left arm. The power fist glowed with golden light, and the imprisoned sloth was released. Cody felt as if he had experienced a long, unconscious dream. As soon as he started to tumble in the air, hundreds of electric snakes pounced on him. Clusters of worms, as if electrocuted, shrank into a ball. Cody, suffering electrocution, instantly sobered up. His first reaction was that he had encountered a psychic lightning attack from a biokinetics psyker. Sloth was about to release his evil will to suppress the psyker when he suddenly saw the black armor warriors standing not far away. His movements immediately became cautious, and he carefully released a hint of will. Cody cautiously glanced at Ning Lu, seeing that he was only staring at him, not moving. The worms squirmed restlessly in a ball. Sloth cautiously took a step forward. Numerous electric snakes suddenly pounced, and the clusters of worms once again shrank together in pain. Ning Lu watched Sloth, thinking to himself. The experiment was successful. The greatest function of the 7th layer of space is restraint. So, what is its use for me? The Baron of Corruption looked up at the sky, watching the ropes that only he could see. As the master of the nation of disorder, I can control this space, obeying my will to form ropes. With a thought, the spider silk dispersed into lines of rules, each wrapping around Sloth's body. The clusters of worms were completely enveloped by an invisible net, revealing the plump worms inside and the dark viscous fluid, different from the necrotic fluid on their surface. Cody, with his internal weaknesses exposed, frantically tried to resist, but he found that his evil will could not stop what was happening. It's not the psyker's telekinesis. He desperately awaited death, but he found that Ning Lu did not kill him. His body merely clumped into a ball, then was stretched into a humanoid shape. After kneading the worm man for a while, Ning Lu released him and continued to ponder. Sloth is bound here, so what about stronger creatures? Ning Lu couldn't help but think of the supreme star god in the Attila star system and the will of the tear of silence that Ramsay had encountered at the Gate of Ecstasy. Before, he had always refrained from acting on them because he lacked confidence. The space Necrons imprisoned star god shards using tesseract labyrinths. I might as well imprison them in another way. I don't have the ability to imprison star god shards, but the nation of disorder is a Sephira, and it should be able to suppress imprisoned star god shards. After Ning Lu had an idea, he further thought. The meaning of doing this is to transfer the star god shards imprisoned in the outside world to my private space for exclusive use. This is a prison. After Ning Lu clarified the function of the 7th layer of space, he thought again. But I still don't have the ability to benefit from it now. In the Baron of Corruption's eyes, a chain suddenly formed, binding Sloth. A flash of inspiration struck him, and he suddenly thought. Ropes, composed of lines of rules, a combination of two abilities. I connected the shadowy aspect of the Nation of Disorder with the fourth layer of space to achieve real-time inter-star system communication in real-time meetings. This is a combination of two layers of space. Then I can also connect the individuals bound by ropes in the seventh layer of space through the association of the fourth layer of space. This way, I should be able to mobilize their power to a certain extent. Ning Lu thought of the space Necrons using star god shards as energy for weapons and couldn't help but think. I should also be able to use star god shards as an energy center to power other spaces. Perhaps, I can also use their abilities through mystical means. Thinking of this, Ning Lu's gaze once again fell on Sloth, and he immediately decided to try him first. With a thought, he returned to the real world. Ning Lu sent messages to Arsena Dunn and Thomas, summoning them. Chapter 532, Lawyer, Luther, I bring new life to Caliban. Wangquan Shadow, Primarch Office. Ning Lu leaned on the throne and said to Arsena Dunn and Thomas. You have extensive experience in ritual magic, and now I have a task for you. The Gene Seed Primarch looked at the ritual magic master, the detective, and the warlock, who possessed vast knowledge. With a thought, he sent his requirements to the two via a psychic link. Along with the information flooding into their brains, the detective and the warlock understood the Black Emperor's demands. They were to design a ritual magic, create talismans, and invoke the power of the Black Emperor. The detective and the warlock exchanged glances, both quite interested in this entirely new endeavor. We obey your will. Thomas, Ning Lu gazed at him, keenly noticing his slightly furrowed brow and somber mood. Why are you troubled? My lord, the librarian saw that the Black Emperor had discerned his worry, and spoke frankly. Since the war with Randan began, 401 have fallen. Combat records compilation and knowledge archiving have both been affected. Ning Lu nodded slightly, thinking that the divination dice would be fully charged in about a month. When we reach Carium Gate, I will tell you how to resolve this. The librarian immediately felt the pressure lift from him. Praise my lord. The same moment Arsena and Thomas left the Primarch office, on the upper deck. Luther and Zahariel sat comfortably in a corner of the office's mess. He glanced around, all those seated were his followers. The lawyer turned his gaze to his adjutant and spoke the words he had prepared in advance. Zahariel, do you truly believe Lion King will accept us again? Lord Lion King. Zahariel, under his psychic hood, was about to blurt out the name but suddenly paused. He recalled that during the Sorosh incident, after the nuclear crisis was resolved, he had twice met the Lion King's gaze during subsequent operational meetings and ground combat. Although he now remembered that the Lion King's eyes had revealed no emotion, this in itself meant that he had lost the Lion King's trust. He was special to Lion King, he had never seen indifference in those eyes. Zahariel still remembered that night on Caliban, the night the knights celebrated after he slew the lion beast. He walked alone with Lion King outside the castle, and he was flattered to see Lion King cunningly lean in and say to him, do you know that now, on Caliban, there is a unique brotherhood between us? He was the only one, besides Luther, whom the Lion King considered a brother. But they had now broken apart. Zahariel knew he had a chance, but he was Luther's adjutant, and based on his responsibility, he chose to keep the secret, telling Lion King nothing. The Lion King commanded you and Astron to follow Luther back to Caliban. Cold words surfaced in his mind. Zahariel's body trembled slightly. He picked up the Tricon black coffee from the coffee machine on the table and drank it all in one gulp. He values loyalty. He will not forgive us. Zahariel said with difficulty, realizing he would never again have the chance to fight alongside his Gene father, the great hero. We defied his exile order, he will punish us. Exactly, Luther, seeing Zahariel was as rational as ever and had accepted reality, continued, Lord Ning Lu has offered us a new opportunity. Zahariel looked at Luther in astonishment, scrutinizing him carefully. Zahariel noticed that Luther was vastly different from before. There was no longer regret or gloom in his eyes, his gaze was firm, just as it was when he led the knights to attack the giant beasts. Zahariel exclaimed, "Lord Luther, you've decided to pledge allegiance to Lord Ning Lu. The Lion King will not allow it." Zahariel looked around, faces reflecting in his eyes, they were all listening to his conversation with Luther. He surveyed the 135 dark angels around him, then realized that no one would tell Lion King what had happened today, just as he himself had once done. They were Luther's knights. Their liege was Luther, not the Lion King. The lawyer's eyes were sharp as knives. "Do you have any other choice?" Seeing Zahariel fall silent, the lawyer spoke again, his words striking at the other's heart. "Lion King abandoned Caliban. Our home was treated as a place of exile. He took his knights and threw those Terra descendants onto Caliban. Do you know why?" The lawyer said coldly. He was displeased that the First Legion was already established before his return. "The Terra descendants are exiles, and so are we. Everyone on Caliban is a prisoner. I bring new life to Caliban." The surrounding dark angels all knelt. "We pledge our lives to Lord Luther." "For Luther. For Caliban." The lawyer drained his coffee, feeling his spirituality become more lively, a slight dissolving sensation within him, like the coffee dissolving in his digestive system. Luther rose and walked to Zahariel, raising his hand to pat his shoulder. "I believe you will make a wise decision." Zahariel watched Luther and the other dark angels leave, remaining silent. During Sarosh, Lion King's indifferent gaze and his smile on Caliban flashed alternately in Zahariel's mind. The chime of the next ship standard cycle rang, and Zahariel awoke from his contemplation. He walked with heavy steps towards the training deck. Stepping onto the training deck, he saw Balsa Kuturi, the librarian of the 19th Legion, and Alistair Rocha, the captain. Zahariel looked with complex emotions at Luther, who stood before Lord Ning Lu, but did not step forward. The Gene Seed Primarch noticed Zahariel's abnormality the moment he stepped onto the training deck. He glanced at Zahariel, capturing his emotions with supernatural perception. He has a lot on his mind. Ning Lu looked thoughtfully at Luther. "My lawyer, loyal to me, has he started using his Beander eloquence to persuade his followers? This will save me a lot of trouble." Ning Lu had no doubt about Luther's abilities. He knew what Zahariel valued most, and how to persuade him. His ability to win hearts, his leadership, his managerial skills, his capacity for development and growth. Below a Primarch, none could compare. "Zahariel, Balsa," Ning Lu said in a deep voice, his words breaking Zahariel's reverie. "I should teach you and develop your psychic abilities." Although he trusted Luther, he wouldn't just sit back and win, he had also promised Balsa he would teach him. Most importantly, he was also very curious about Zahariel's unique psychic ability. "I need to understand your abilities before I can begin teaching you." Zahariel drew the lion's sword, forged for him by Lion King, from his waist. With the sword in hand, his eyes gradually became resolute. Ning Lu drew Val's sword, and with a flash of his figure, he appeared before Zahariel. Zahariel had no time to react, the blue-white blade was already at his throat. "Awaken your psychic powers." Zahariel looked at the towering Gene Seed Primarch. He hadn't even seen the Gene Seed Primarch's attack or retreat. He knew he had to use the rare psychic ability his brother, Librarian Israfil, spoke of, fear vision, to perceive the Gene Seed Primarch's movements and possibly keep up with him. But he didn't know how to actively activate his ability, and Israfil didn't know either. Perhaps the Emperor knew, but he hadn't told him after testing him. That memory in Zahariel's mind was very blurry. As a librarian, he knew the Emperor had used his powerful psychic abilities to erase the testing process. He only remembered a dazzling golden light and a needle-like pain. "How do I actively use fear vision? You can keep up with me." The Gene Seed Primarch's mighty figure vanished. Zahariel blindly swung the lion's sword in the direction where Ning Lu had just stood. As expected, his sword swung through empty air. The Gene Seed Primarch appeared beside him, the blue-white blade across his throat. Zahariel decided to move. He performed agile turns and nimble rolls repeatedly on the training deck. No matter how he moved, the blade appeared at his throat again and again. After losing sight of Lord Ning Lu countless times, Zahariel angrily swung the lion's sword, striking at the spot where the Gene Seed Primarch had just flashed. The lion's sword effortlessly cut through the deck, leaving a sword mark a fist deep. Zahariel angrily pulled out the lion's sword, countless images flashing through his mind. Lion King's merciless gaze, the cold order of exile, the days and nights trapped on Caliban, the powerlessness of a blade at his throat countless times. In Zahariel's vision, everything suddenly slowed down. For the first time, he saw the attacking figure of the Gene Seed Primarch. He had vanished from his original position. The Gene Seed Primarch's eyes flashed. He instantly activated warp vision. He saw Zahariel, who had vanished into nothingness, his body phasing and entering the warp. He saw him leap into the real world, swinging the lion's sword, striking at him with a speed beyond the Astartes' limits. The Gene Seed Primarch held Val's sword horizontally, blocking the incoming lion's sword. Good. Zahariel moved between the warp and reality, frequently flashing around Ning Lu and attacking. The Gene Seed Primarch's warp vision captured the trajectory of Zahariel's every move. Zahariel's hundreds of thousands of attacks ended in a single breath. Every one of his attacks was blocked by the Gene Seed Primarch. After one breath, Zahariel's movements suddenly slowed. His fear vision had ended. Ning Lu gazed at Zahariel. I can teach you how to master activating fear vision. Chapter 533. The corrosion of the future Cipher, and the present one will soon follow. November 864. Wangquan Shadow, training deck. Zahariel drew his lion's sword. Made from the fangs of a lion king, this sword was shorter than those of other Caliban knights. However, the power of the sword forged by the Lion King compensated for its reduced length. The exposed metal cross guard, leather grip, and bronze pommel were all simple, but the blade's luster was a dazzling, pearly white. Zahariel's fingers quickly traced the ivory-like blade, then he looked up at Lord Ning Lu. Lord Ning Lu's earnest teachings echoed in his ears. Fear vision originates from the power of fear. Zahariel bowed to the Gene Seed Primarch. The moment he straightened, he actively awakened his memories of fear. The fear of death when facing the Lion King, and the fear of losing Lion's friendship. Fear transformed into power, and Zahariel emulated the war mask to create a fear mask. He would feel fear, but he would not surrender to it. Fear was his source of power. He could control the power of fear. Everything in Zahariel's vision seemed as if time had stopped. His body shifted, leaping into the warp, then flashing behind Ning Lu, swiftly thrusting with the lion's sword. Ning Lu's memories rewound to the moment he first arrived in this world, learned he was the 11th Primarch, and feared the fate of being erased. He looked back at that memory from a detached perspective and drew strength from it. Ning Lu's figure also vanished into nothingness, flashing to Zahariel's side, the blade of Val's sword slashing towards his arm. The Gene Seed Primarch, relying on his perception through warp vision, had deconstructed the application of fear vision while teaching Zahariel. Ning Lu and Zahariel intertwined between reality and the warp, their blades flashing on the training deck and in the Sea of Souls. Fear vision was Zahariel's talent, but the Gene Seed Primarch's psychic power far surpassed his. Balsa Kucheri's eyes were deep, barely keeping track of the warp phase shifts. His eyes gleamed. He had never seen such powerful psychic energy before. Luther's eyes widened, following the figures in the real world. At first, his naked eyes could barely keep up with their movements. But in less than a breath, he could no longer distinguish the overlapping figures. The lawyer activated his psychic vision, observing the battlefield. He saw figures intertwined with white and black, and the shining golden light of the Lion King. It's Zahariel. Where is Lord Ning Lu? The lawyer stared at the battlefield, a black shadow flashing chillingly in his eyes. Lord Ning Lu. He strained to distinguish the shadow, and then it flashed again. The lawyer found that he couldn't keep up with the flickering shadow. Relying on the secret supplicant's high spiritual intuition, Alistair Rocha saw the battlefield most clearly. He could see the trajectory of the shadow, but he dared not stare at it continuously. The secret supplicant's spiritual intuition warned him of the immense power hidden within the shadow. His eyes twitched, opening and closing intermittently. Zahariel's attack lasted for 2 breaths. He suddenly appeared, and the 3 spectators all saw him. The lion's sword was plunged into the deck, supporting his weakened body. Zahariel trembled all over, and cold mist puffed from his nose. He was chilled to the bone, yet he was warmed the moment he saw Lord Ning Lu's smile. Lion King valued him, but he had never taught him like his mentors Ramil and Amadeus, or Lord Ning Lu. Before boarding the Wenquan Shadow, he had never expected to receive such patient instruction from a Gene Seed Primarch. Since there is no choice, following Lord Luther and pledging allegiance to Lord Ning Lu is also the best option. For Luther, and for Caliban. Thank you for your guidance, Lord. I have mastered fear vision. Ning Lu sheathed his sword, looking at Zahariel with scrutiny. Although he had digested the Baron of Corruption potion and no digestive sensation reminded him, the Gene Seed Primarch could confirm that he had corroded Zahariel through his eyes and demeanor. At the same time, Zahariel also overlapped with the future figure in his memory. A figure holding 2 guns and carrying the lion sword on his back. With such combat power, it's no wonder he could kill the 3rd Lord Cipher and become the 4th Lord Cipher. Wandering the galaxy for 10,000 years, repeatedly breaking through the pursuit of the Dark Angels and other unforgivable warbands. Ning Lu knew that Lord Cipher was a title bestowed by Caliban upon those responsible for guarding the traditions of the Knightly Order. He didn't know how many Lords Cipher there were before Lion landed on Caliban, but since then, there had been 4. The current Lord Cipher was the 3rd, after Zahariel killed him, Luther promoted him to be the 4th. The future Lord Cipher has been corroded by me, and the present one will soon follow. Both the old and new Lord Cipher will be corroded by me. Congratulations on unearthing your abilities. Come to my office in 10 minutes, and I will teach you new abilities. Zahariel, filled with excitement, walked with light steps into the Primarch office. He saw Lord Ning Lu push a bottle of black potion in front of him and instruct him. Drink it. Zahariel didn't hesitate. He opened the potion, and the pungent stench made him wrinkle his nose. The potion Ning Lu chose for Zahariel was the Sleepless. Although the future Cipher was more adept at covert operations, he was somewhat involuntarily so. Now Zahariel had embarked on a different path, and his rare psychic ability, Fear Vision, also had some connection to the Sequence 3 Horror Bishop of the Darkness pathway. Zahariel's abilities were outstanding, and he had the potential to become a high sequence Beander. A moment later, Zahariel, now a Sleepless, performed the Caliban Knight's salute. Lord Ning Lu, from this day forward, I am your knight. Ning Lu stood up, drew Val's sword, and as his spirituality spread and changed the concept, the force field transformed into an ordinary blade, lightly resting on Zahariel's shoulder. I accept your allegiance. After Zahariel left, Ning Lu thought silently. Among the key corrosion targets, only Balsa remains uncorrupted. The more loyal one is, the harder it is to corrode them. To corrode Balsa, I still need to put some thought into it, perhaps a catalyst is needed. As Ning Lu pondered, the communication bead in his ear buzzed. He pressed the communication bead, and Arsena Dun's calm voice came through. My lord, according to your command, the librarian and I have successfully researched the ritual magic. Should we pray to the Black Emperor now? Yes. Ning Lu granted their request. Primarch Palace, original body servant's private quarters. After Arsena hung up the communication, he said to Thomas. My lord has granted permission. Let's begin. The two had already prepared the materials for the ritual. They immediately went to the altar. After Arsena injected spirituality and activated the Euclidean sigil, Thomas felt his connection to the warp severed, and the entire altar was isolated. The warlock touched the bottle at his waist, and the discomfort of losing his psychic power quickly receded. He opened his eye of secrets, watching Arsena create a spiritual wall with a ritual dagger. After Arsena's body, mind, and soul quieted down, he knelt on the black onyx cushion and recited the formal incantation in Dun language. The Black Emperor of the Order Shadows. I implore your favor. The detective paused for a moment, and the warlock's eye of secrets also narrowed. The subsequent incantation was their entirely new exploration. They would soon know whether their research into ritual magic during this period had been successful. Arsena's gaze fell on the 33 irregularly shaped talismans made of even-numbered black gold, placed on the altar before him, and he continued to recite the prayer. I pray to you. I pray that you grant me strength. Grant me the power to complete the worm talisman. After Arsena finished reciting the incantation they had researched, he recited the subsequent part of the ordinary prayer. O balance, the equilibrium of the chaotic kingdom, please transmit power to my incantation. Monarch's iron law, the foundation of the chaotic kingdom, please transmit power to my incantation. At the same moment, in the fourth dimension of the nation of disorder, when Arsena began to pray, Ning Lu extended threads, connecting with the seventh dimension, where Sloth was bound. Seeing black mist rising and a phantom door forming, the Baron of Corruption concentrated his mind, giving a strong will, projecting Sloth's will into the phantom door's intent. In the seventh dimension, Sloth was suddenly enveloped in black mist, shrouded in shadow. In the fourth dimension, Ning Lu saw lines of rules, pulling a mass of shadow into the phantom door. At the original body servant's altar, as black mist churned, the phantom door opened. The warlock's eye of secrets immediately felt a mighty power descend. His gaze quickly moved away from the phantom door and towards the runes on the altar. He saw black mist enveloping the 33 black metal talismans, and saw worm-like imprints appearing out of thin air on them. We succeeded, the warlock said to the detective. Arsena maintained his hands clasped together, reverently saying, Praise be to my Lord. After breaking the spiritual environment, they each picked up a rune. As soon as the black runes entered their hands, they immediately felt nausea, irritation, and a chilling sense of evil. Arsena injected spirituality, closing the Euclidean sigil. The librarian's eyes narrowed slightly, trying to mobilize his own psychic power. Unable to use psychic power. Using the activation rune will make it more powerful. The detective speculated. Once it's released, the Randan aliens, sensing their master's aura, will definitely see a significant drop in their combat power. As the detective and the warlock examined the worm talisman, in the fourth dimension of the nation of disorder, Ning Lu was also scrutinizing the entire process of the ritual magic. Sloth shows no obvious signs of weakening, their spiritual radiance hasn't dimmed, so it doesn't affect them as potion materials. However, to be cautious, I will make a worm talisman periodically. Ning Lu's eyes sparkled, he thought of the star god shard. Once I move them to the seventh dimension, I can also try to extract power from them to create different talismans. With anticipation, Ning Lu's mind stirred, and he arrived at the third dimension, reaching out to pick up the fully charged divination dice. Chapter 534, Gilliman, I've once again cuckolded your son's homeworld. Ning Lu picked up the fully charged divination dice, and information about Manora flashed through his mind. Limit Star Territory, feudal world Manora, a harsh world where the populace constantly fights. After all Ning Lu knew about Manora flashed through his mind, he silently chanted. The star chart from Carium Gate to Manora. After chanting 11 times, he threw the divination dice from his hand. After tumbling a few times in the air, the triangular prism landed in Ning Lu's open palm, and a holographic-like image appeared before his eyes. Ning Lu recorded the star chart and input it into a data crystal. He then returned to the real world, and through a psychic link, he sent Mancora's data to John. The Calamity Priest immediately performed a dream divination but received no special revelations. Ning Lu then sent a communication message to the librarian, summoning him. A moment later, Thomas walked into the Primarch office and excitedly said, My lord, the worm charm has been completed and will be a powerful weapon against Randan's strong warriors. I know. Distribute it to each chapter for experimentation. Ning Lu ordered, then pushed the data crystal in front of the librarian. Upon arriving at Carium Gate, you will immediately lead a team to Manora in the Limit Star territory. That world nurtures far more psychers than other worlds. Ning Lu chose Manora not only because this world nurtured psychers, but also because the librarians recruited from Manora showed no abnormalities. The Roaring Griffins chapter, to be established in the 33rd millennium, would have Manora as its homeworld. Among the many successor chapters of the Ultramarines, the Roaring Griffins had the purest gene seed, without any defects. Considering that the Roaring Griffins possessed a powerful librarian team that surpassed other chapters, this indicated that Manora had not been affected by chaos or other influences. Seeing the joy on Thomas's face, he continued. Besides cultivating librarians, you must also carefully perceive and unearth the secrets of Manora. You will be able to comprehend a unique psychic technique from that world, capable of shattering enemies' resolve by emitting a powerful roar like a diving raptor. This is also a powerful weapon against warp creatures, capable of shaking the shackles that bind them to the material plane and banishing them back to the warp. Ning Lu decided to name the unique psychic technique they would use after the Roaring Griffins. This technique is called Griffin's Roar. Ning Lu speculated that it was precisely because of the mystery of Manora forming the Griffin's Roar that chaos could not corrupt that world. For the sake of the Griffin's Roar, he decided to send the librarian, and no one else. As the strongest psychic in the mental category below himself, who mastered the Eye of Secrets and was skilled in many spells, the warlock would surely comprehend the Griffin's Roar. Thomas's eyes were deep, and he pondered the reason for comprehending the psychic technique from the perspective of a mystery prior. Natural wonder. Ancient races' methods. Thomas, filled with curiosity, picked up the key to Manora. My lord, I will not fail your expectations. Ning Lu watched Thomas's retreating figure and silently thought. Guilliman, I'm sorry I cuckolded your son's homeworld again. As the Gene Seed Primarch pondered, he turned his gaze to the observation window, his sight piercing through it. The Wangquan shadow was passing through the barrier between the warp and reality. After the Wangquan shadow arrived at Carium Gate, Alistair Rocha returned to his frigate. On his way back to the Legion, the secret supplicant began to pray to the Black Emperor at the newly built altar. Ethan retracted his gaze, left the observation deck, and walked to his console. He entered Magnus's first layer of mental state, immersing himself in the work of a scribes, beginning the compilation of the Legion's combat records. At the same moment Ethan immersed himself in work, Hather Mayat boarded the Wangquan shadow. He descended from the boarding ramp of a red Skyhawk shuttle, and the Piak surrounding him would not be noticed by those without etheric sight. The Piak was like a soaring eagle made of 1,000,000 golden stars, vainly and proudly looking down at its surroundings. The Piak's golden body suddenly trembled. It noticed many people around it casting their gazes upon it. Among them was a team of 100, most of whom wore psychic hoods and carried staffs, clearly librarians of the Order Shadows. But there were also some other black armor warriors, their black eyes deep, as if they saw his beautiful, shining phantom. The Piak unconsciously lowered its height, hovering behind Hather's head. Hather met Thomas, and the two librarians greeted each other. The warlock's Eye of Secrets gazed at the Piak, and through the golden light, he saw a body condensed from pure, formless energy. That was a form condensed from warp energy. It is. Its name is Piak, and it is my guardian spirit, Hather said without concealment. This is what we Thousand Sons call them. Ahriman and others initially thought they were angels, but soon this word was discarded. This ancient word was too emotional and contained too much mystery. We prefer to call them in a way that can be understood. They are actually fragments of the primordial one's creation from the vast ocean, forced to materialize and function according to our will, as we possess psychic powers. Thomas nodded slightly, his Eye of Secrets scrutinizing the Piak and Hather. He instinctively felt that the guardian spirit did not completely submit to the will of the Thousand Sons. As he probed, Hather asked, "Do you have a mission?" "Yes, to carry out my lord's command," Thomas replied. Hather wore a perfect smile. "Then I wouldn't dare delay your journey. I need to see Lord Ning Lu." Thomas nodded. He led 100 Legion librarians, boarded the Stormbird, and flew towards the cruiser. Ethan, from Barbarous, as a rare unyielding psyker, had just been granted power by the Gene Seed Primarch, becoming a warrior. Through the Stormbird's observation window, he gazed at the warships in the void. There were no Grim Grey Death Guard warships. After disembarking, Ethan immediately ascended to Magnus's first layer of mental state, calming his fluctuating thoughts. He then entered the Scribe's work state, beginning to compile the Legion's combat records. At the same moment, Hather stepped into the Primarch office. The Gene Seed Primarch looked up from his desk, gazing at the shining phantom in the air. The Piok immediately felt a mountain-like pressure. It fearfully cowered behind Hather's Crimson Iron Rider Terminator armor. It heard the sound of a sword being drawn and let out a terrified shriek. The next instant, an invisible force struck it, and it spun, thrown into an invisible vortex. My lord, Hather, who had a similar experience, said, "You have succeeded in creating a Sohm sigil similar to my father's, the same sigil." Ning Lu nodded slightly. "You will learn it. Guardian spirits are not benevolent. You must be careful." Although he knew that Hather was one of the few thousand suns who had not been controlled by a guardian spirit and exploded from warp energy, he still gave a reminder. He also would not purify the Piok. Without a guardian spirit, Hather would be rejected. It could be purified before the burning of Prospero. Before that, as long as Hather mastered the Euclidean sigil, he would be able to temporarily shield the Piok when needed. Hather thoughtfully replied, "My lord, I understand. I will be careful in the future." He then gave a brief, detailing the specifics of the Dawn Star rescue mission, the details not submitted to the War Council. Finally, he pulled out a data crystal. "My lord, this contains all the secrets of the Dragon Kingdoms mastered by the Thousand Suns." Ning Lu nodded slightly. "Congratulations, you have achieved your wish and become a librarian. All thanks to my lord's bestowal," Hather said sincerely. If he hadn't met Lord Ning Lu, he would have had no chance to challenge Ahriman, let alone defeat him. "My lord, father has entrusted Alexandria IV to me, and the Cult of Destruction will follow my command." Alexandria IV, the Gene Seed Primarch's superhuman brain recalled the situation of this world with a brief thought. Alexandria IV was one of the first worlds reclaimed after Magnus's return to the Legion, a symbol of the 15th Legion's achievements. The Imperium's best engineers and the Thousand Suns collaborated to build Prospero-style cities on Alexandria IV. Alexandria IV, centered on erudition, was the Thousand Suns' largest repository of knowledge outside of Tizca. This is the power you gain by becoming a librarian. Ning Lu knew that besides the 5 major schools, there were many smaller organizations within the Thousand Suns. The Cult of Destruction was one of the more powerful ones, with each member being an actuary, logician, analyst, and highly capable organizer. The Cult of Destruction would prioritize preparing logistical supplies, and the Thousand Suns Legion's warships' docking and maintenance were also under the control of this cult. They were responsible for planning combat operations, and thus were often deployed behind the Thousand Suns in any major battle. Alexandria IV was originally established by the Cult of Destruction through meticulous planning. Now, Magnus entrusting it to Hather was the power he gained as a librarian. "Control Alexandria IV and the Cult of Destruction. As you command, my lord," Hather replied confidently. With a thought, Ning Lu sent the mysteries of the Euclidean sigil to Hather via a psychic link. He drew Val's sword, and with a swing, dispelled the Euclidean sigil. "Wait outside for a moment, come in after 5 minutes." The guardian spirit, banished back to the warp, could not return to the real world on its own before Hather performed a summoning ritual. A moment later, Ning Lu instructed Hather, who had become a hypnotist. "Psychically suggest your Bright Feather School, Second Society, and the Thousand Sons of the Cult of Destruction to pledge allegiance to you." Ignis is the primary target. Ignis, Lord of Destruction, was the future leader of the Cult of Destruction, and particularly skilled in space warfare. He had clashed with several space warfare experts from other legions without defeat. His most brilliant achievement was in the Alexandria IV campaign during the grand birthday celebration. Ignis's Cult of Destruction toyed with Prax, the first chapter master of the Crimson Fists, an Imperial Fists commander who had once contended with Perturabo in space combat. The Cult of Destruction, led by Ignis, was a leader in space warfare. As you wish, my lord. Chapter 535, The Night Lord. He actually traversed the magma flames without any harm. Limit Star Territory, Gem World Ventilian, Starport. Planetary Governor Justine Vatala watched as the Black Skyhawk shuttle gracefully descended from the sky. As the landing gear extended, Justine walked towards the Night Lord. He saw Thierry Vieira disembarking from the deck and immediately stopped, stunned. Justine was astonished to see that the Lord was over half a meter taller than when he last saw him. Other nobles, following the governor's gaze, looked at the Night Lord with awe and admiration. They were all stunned by the giant's physique. Justine was the first to recover, suppressing the doubts lingering in his mind, and stepped forward as usual. Stepping into the giant's shadow, he said gratefully, "Night Lord, thank you for accepting the invitation and taking time away from the front lines to attend the coming-of-age ceremony." Thierry arrived at Carium Gate via the Abyss Port's teleportation gate, and then, utilizing Carium Gate, which had just completed all repair work, he was transported from the northern Obscurus sector to Ventilian in the eastern Limit Star Territory in just 3 weeks of travel. "This is my duty," the Night Lord nodded slightly, "and I am also very interested in the monsters of the Magma Lake. I believe there won't be another disaster this time," Justine joked, referring to how the coming-of-age ceremony had to be temporarily changed 3 years ago due to the Night Lord's disaster prediction. "I think." Thierry paused deliberately, "Not this time." Justine laughed heartily, then said, "My lord, the coming-of-age ceremony is ready. Please follow me." Outside the Magma Lake, many Ventilian nobles cheered loudly as the black armor warriors of the Order Shadows arrived. They still remembered the warning from 3 years ago. If not for the warning, many of them would have perished in the erupting sea of magma flames. Justine and Thierry ascended the elevator together to the platform above. The sound array device emitted a faint electrical hiss, and holographic projections of the scene were simultaneously broadcast throughout Ventilian. "Gentlemen, ladies, today we gather here for the glorious coming-of-age ceremony. Unlike in the past, the Great Order Shadows will also join us." The holographic projection switched, showing 2nd Company Commander Yurger and 10 Pugilist Honor Guard members to the Ventilian people. The scene shifted again, revealing 1,408 tall Ventilian Order Shadows candidates. Not only that, Thierry stepped forward, his giant body appearing in the projection. His majestic voice resonated throughout Ventilian through the sound array device. "The armor I once wore." The scene shifted, displaying a set of Black Lord Hunter suite to everyone. After consideration, the Night Lord decided to use his former armor as a prize to deepen his connection with the Ventilian people. The person with the best performance will receive this set of armor. The recipient will gain physical enhancements and 8 years of my combat experience. The image froze on the black armor, and the eyes of over 100,000 Ventilian nobles attending the coming-of-age ceremony sparkled, then quickly dimmed. They had no confidence in defeating the superhuman Order Shadows, even if they were not wearing armor. Limited to Ventilian people. As soon as the Night Lord's words fell, the eyes of the Ventilian young men and women lit up. Their opponents were not the Order Shadows, but other nobles participating in the coming-of-age ceremony, as well as the Order Shadows candidates. Although the candidates were the most outstanding among them, the gap was not insurmountable. Omari McCarty, ranked 3005th in the candidate trials, clenched his fist. He had missed passing the first stage of screening by only 5 places. Chris Anderson's hand rested on the gem-decorated sword hilt. Due to his father's accidental death, he had given up his dream of becoming an Order Shadow to take over family affairs, and now he had a new opportunity. "I must win this suite as a holy relic for the Anderson family." Thierry left the high platform under the gaze of the nobles and came to the camp established by the Order Shadows. The apothecaries were preparing for the coming-of-age ceremony and saluted the Lord upon seeing him. Thierry walked onward, entering a room decorated with longswords and gems, where he stripped off the suite Malevolus had just forged for him. He changed into a black robe woven from fireproof material, put on matching fireproof composite boots of the same color, and picked up a practice chainsword that matched his physique. Thierry strode forward, leaving the camp. He entered the black magma canyon and immediately felt a wave of heat wash over him. Thierry's gaze swept over the canyon walls, where layers of different colored, intermingled rock formations were stacked together. He had just entered the magma lake's entrance, stepping on the protruding, scorching rocks. Thierry saw thousands of members of the Noble Council, in groups of dozens, overlooking from the carved cave walls inside the rock face. In the air, pugilists rode hover bikes, and apothecaries with their retinues drove land speeders. Servo skulls floated higher up, auspexes cast green light onto the lake's surface, projecting images throughout Ventilian. Thierry looked at the surface of the magma lake. The coming-of-age ceremony had already begun, and the Ventilian people were fighting monsters covered in flames while treading on reefs. Omari McCarty led dozens of noble candidates, charging towards a group of catfish-like monsters with tentacles over a meter long. More than a dozen agile noble youths, their ornate armor glowing with runes. Splashing magma struck their protective force fields, emitting an ear-splitting hiss. The catfish monsters whipped their tentacles, lashing out at the noble youths. The noble youths nimbly jumped to pre-selected reefs, the tentacles striking empty air with snapping sounds. Their corpulent bodies writhed, raising their arms to embrace the youths. Attack! Omari roared, leading the other youths in a charge. The noble youths, in groups of 3 to 5, attacked the catfish monsters, their ornate noble longswords flashing. The combat training they received from a young age, and countless real combat exercises, allowed them to maintain a good degree of action completion even under tension. Slashing bellies, stabbing arms. Omari charged alone towards a catfish monster. He took 3 steps, leapt into the air, and plunged his longsword, using the first principle of Osbervaya, between its eyes. Omari landed, rolling, and charged towards the next monster. In the candidate training camp, he had mastered the first principle of Vostronia's sword fighting to perfection. Omari continuously leapt and landed among the reefs, stabbing repeatedly. Splash, splash. One by one, the catfish monsters crashed into the magma, and in an instant, no monsters surfaced at the edge of the magma lake. He rallied his excited followers and immediately charged forward. The catfish monsters were rated very low. Killing 100 of them was barely enough for one person to pass the ceremonial trial, so they had to kill more highly rated monsters. He saw Chris, who effectively managed the Anderson family's affairs but was not recognized by the nobles, had already single-handedly killed over 10 scorpion-like monsters. He had already passed the trial, but he was still fighting his way towards the center of the lake. Omari knew that every noble would not be satisfied with their current achievements. Everyone yearned for the Night Lord's miraculous armor, a holy relic that a gem mine could not buy. Chris, with a backhand thrust using the second principle of Osbervaya, pierced a scorpion-like monster, his combat boot stomping on the monster's burning body. Accompanied by an ear-splitting bang, he leapt forward with all his might. In mid-air, he saw that the Order Shadow's candidates ahead had already pulled nearly 100 meters ahead of him. They had already entered the outer perimeter of the central area. The monsters there were more dangerous and highly rated. Chris's eyes narrowed, and images of him defeating candidates one by one on the training ground flashed through his mind. In the past, most of them performed worse than me in training. Now, they have far outstripped me. I really missed my chance. Chris resolutely pulled out a combat stimulant from his waist-mounted equipment belt. He sharply raised his hand and injected the highest-grade Ventilian combat stimulant, worth 10,000 gems, into his neck. Chris's speed suddenly surged, his ornate longsword spinning in his hand, and several meter-long scorpion-like monsters crashed into the magma lake, their bodies sinking into it. Chris's gaze was fixed on the tall silhouette of an Order Shadow's candidate, and the steadily closing distance made him feel that the price he paid was worth it. He injected a second combat stimulant, and his speed increased further. The distance between them was no more than 10 meters. Just as Chris lunged forward, he suddenly felt the ground beneath him surge. A 5-meter-long, 3-meter-wide crocodile suddenly leapt out of the lake. Chris's eyes were cold. This time, no one could stop his advance. He raised his longsword with both hands and brought it down with the seventh principle of Osber Via's cleaving technique. The longsword struck the crocodile monster's left eye, and amidst a deafening roar, Chris leapt into the air. He suddenly felt the magma below surge, and another crocodile leapt out. Chris desperately tried to dodge, but he was in mid-air and couldn't move freely. One of the crocodile's fangs bit into his side ribs. The ornate armor let out a piercing shriek before being bitten through, and several ribs were torn off. Flames scorched Chris, who had lost a significant portion of his right ribs, as he tumbled down. Just as Chris thought he was doomed, the roar of an engine sounded. Through his blurred vision, he saw himself being caught by an order shadow. The pugilist caught the noble youth, then threw him with force towards the land speeder, before stomping on the accelerator to avoid the crocodile monster. The attendant operated medical clamps to secure the noble youth, while an appendage sprayed white medical gel. Chris's body trembled with pain. The apothecary poured a bottle of bluish-green potion into him, and his pale face gradually became flushed. The apothecary's scalpel then descended, beginning the treatment. Justine watched as noble youths and maidens, one after another, were rescued from danger below, and remarked with emotion. In every coming-of-age ceremony in the past, over 10,000 people would die in the magma lake, their bodies completely incinerated. From now on, no more than 100 will die. While the planetary governor was lamenting, Thierry had already sped towards the center of the magma lake. With a speed beyond his size, he instantly caught up with the candidates who had undergone different modification surgeries. Thierry's eyes suddenly lit up. He saw cylindrical objects in the center of the lake, adorned with sharp, barbed spines. At first glance, they resembled scorpion tail hooks. But the Order shadows saw clearly that these were parts of lotus roots exposed above the lake surface. There are actually plants surviving in this lake. As Thierry pondered, he suddenly saw an Order shadow, dodging dozens of fire snakes lunging at him, step on a lotus root. The scorpion tail hook-like tip of the lotus root instantly pierced through the sole of his boot. The candidate, over 2 meters tall and nearly finished with all modification surgeries, was instantly riddled with holes like a beehive. Countless fire snakes, like sharks scenting blood, shot out of the lake, lunging at the surrounding dozen or so candidates. Thierry suddenly accelerated, instantly arriving beside the candidate's corpse. His chainsword spun rapidly, tearing fire snakes in half. Retreat. Upon hearing the Night Lord's command, the candidates immediately began to retreat rapidly. More and more fire snakes sprang from the magma, lunging at Thierry. The Dawn Paladin showed no panic. A refined full-body armor quickly condensed on his body. He wore a crested helmet, gauntlets encased his hands, and a breastplate covered his torso. The shining, Dawn armor attracted all the fire snakes. They frantically lunged at the Dawn Paladin, crashing against the Dawn armor with thudding sounds. Seeing that the candidates had retreated, Thierry suddenly swung out his chainsword, which was wreathed in flames. He scooped up the candidate's corpse and tossed it to a pugilist who had come to provide support. Then, grabbing a lotus root in each hand, the Dawn Paladin exerted force with both arms. The nearly 1,000-meter-long lotus roots, whose bases were rooted in the lakebed, were pulled up whole. Fire snakes slapped against him, and flames burned on his gauntlets. The Dawn Paladin felt his spirituality rapidly draining, and he suddenly pulled back. The Dawn armor had no weight whatsoever, not affecting his swift movements in the slightest. The Ventilians rubbed their eyes, astonished to see that as fire snakes attacked the Night Lord, his steps remained swift. He even casually retreated, holding the flame-wreathed lotus roots in both hands. The Night Lord actually traversed the magma flames, calmly leaving the magma lake. 4 days later, the coming-of-age ceremony celebration. Justine announced loudly, on behalf of the Ventilian Noble Council, I congratulate all gentlemen and ladies who have passed the trial and become new noble members. Omari McCarty, with the 14 nobles who had passed the trial beside him, stood tall, chests out, with proud expressions. Chris Anderson, wrapped in bandages, showed no joy despite passing the trial. He looked enviously at the tall figure dressed in a thin black bodysuit, as Justine's proud voice echoed in his ears. Finally, let us congratulate the victor. The voice paused deliberately. Joe Vatala, he will become the heir to the great Night Lord's suite. Justine watched his son, with the help of attendants, don the black suite. He scanned the many nobles. It was wise of me to send my heir to participate in the candidacy. The Vatala family will be celebrated and rule Ventilian forever. Justine's thoughts were interrupted by the exclamations of the nobles. He looked at his son. Joe felt his body being kneaded and stretched, his body heating up and swelling, his skin, muscles, and bones feeling as if they were melting. The adaptive evolution lasted for nearly a week, and Joe's body gradually expanded to match the originally loose black suite. His brain felt like it was being pricked with needles. Something seemed to have been added to his brain. The apothecary had been continuously monitoring Joe's physical indicators. A week later, the 8th Company had a new recruit, taller than the other Order shadows. Chapter 536, Russ's Conspiracy. I have the Conspirer. Carium Gate Star System, Wenquan Shadow, Primarch Office. Ning Lu, who was buried in data slates, heard a faint prayer. He glanced at the large clock hanging on the wall. There were still 10 minutes before Arsena came to report. Ning Lu's mind stirred, and he entered the 4th layer of the Nation of Disorder. His spirituality spread, and he saw Thierry Vieira, holding his hands in reverse, and 2 lotus roots intertwined on the altar. With a thought, he pulled Thierry and the lotus roots into the Nation of Disorder. My lord. Thierry bowed, then briefly reported to the Black Emperor about attending Ventilian's coming-of-age ceremony, bestowing his former suit, and winning hearts. Finally, he said, this lotus root grew in Ventilian's magma and is quite special. I thought you might like it. Ning Lu sat high on his throne. He had already recognized the lotus root Thierry offered him as the Fire Lotus Root, the only missing material for the Pyromaniac's subsequent Sequence 6, Conspirer. I am indeed interested in this item. Order the candidates participating in the final assessment to collect them. As you wish. Thierry accepted the order, deciding to immediately have the tech sergeant develop harvesting tools. After sending Thierry back to the blade, Ning Lu returned to the real world. 2 minutes later, Arsena Dunn, holding a data slate, stepped into the Primarch office. My lord, the fleets of the Dark Angels and the Space Wolves have arrived at Carium Gate. Ning Lu leaned back on his throne and asked with interest. Who are the commanders? The Dark Angels were originally the main force of the Randan War. During the Third Randan War, Lehman Russ put aside his grievances with Lionel Johnson and cooperated to cleanse the Randan homeworld. The commander of the Dark Angels is Urian Bendrag, leading 5 battle groups, including the 8th battle group. His flagship is the Rongguang Nuwang class battleship, abhorrent exemplar. The commander of the Space Wolves is the Wolf Lord of the 5th Great Company, Amlodi Skirsen's son. After the silver-haired original body servant reported, he asked the Black Emperor for instructions. Who do you wish to see first? Bendrag. After Ning Lu decided, he further instructed. Luther asked me to keep his secret. Have Bendrag avoid all possible contact. As you command, Arsena said. 5 standard hours later, Ning Lu gazed at Bendrag walking into the office. He keenly noticed that this Legion Master of the First Legion, before Lion's return, was enveloped in a cloud of melancholy. He was very different from his high-spirited self after winning glory in the war against the Midas. More and more Terra descendants are being exiled to Caliban by Lion. Bendrag must have also felt Lion's estrangement. As a former Legion Master, he wouldn't even be the 100th person, let alone the 2nd. The nominal second in command of the Dark Angels is Luther, but in reality, Lion now trusts the Legion's strongest swordsman, Koz Wayne, the most. Bendrag can only return to the 8th battle group. Lord Ning Lu, Bendrag respectfully saluted. then directly made a request: please give me the most difficult task. The Gene Seed Primarch heard determination and bitterness in Bendrag's tone, which reminded him of the Dark Angels after the Battle of Fort Calcassin, who, after being reprimanded by Guilliman, sought to prove themselves by furiously attacking Xenos across the galaxy. A thought flashed through Ning Lu's mind: open black lens bracket Bendrag is quite miserable. Should I do a good deed and, corrosion, him? But the Bendrag in my memory died in the Battle of Fort Calcassin. I don't know his loyalty to Lion. If I keep him by my side and fail to, corrosion, him, Luther will be exposed. Your legion will be responsible for rescuing the fortress world of resistance. Ning Lu decided not to take risks for now. Luther was far more important than Bendrag. At the same time, he also believed that Bendrag was not yet desperate. He was still trying to prove himself to his Gene Father. Perhaps, if he suffers setbacks at the Fortress of Resistance, there might be an opportunity. The Fortress of Resistance has been besieged by Xenos for 3 years. Although the fortress world has not yet fallen, the situation is precarious. Arsena operated the control stick, highlighting the Fortress of Resistance on the galactic star map. Amidst a sea of red dots, a lone green sphere glowed. Dozens of surrounding Imperial worlds have all fallen, losing strategic space and all supplies. The only unverified intelligence indicates that the Xenos have one artificial war satellite and thousands of warships in the entire sub-sector, along with countless Xeno warriors. Thank you for your trust. Bendrag said gratefully. A powerful enemy was exactly what he urgently needed now. As soon as Bendrag walked out of the Primarch office, he saw 2 warriors clad in wolf pelts and great power armor approaching him. Urian Bendrag. Skirson's voice, loud and stern, came from beneath the wolf pelt mask. A black wolf pelt was secured behind Skirson's neck by bone clasps, and the skull and long fangs of a dead giant wolf formed his right shoulder guard. Wolf Lord, Skirson. Bendrag raised his head, casting a contemptuous glance at the drooling giant wolf at his feet. The two passed each other, and his gaze lingered for a moment on the rune priest covered in amulets. He saw a smile on the rune priest's deeply lined face, but Bendrag merely walked past in silence. Bendrag left the two behind, then heard the Primarch's honor guard behind him say sternly, "Wolves, no entry." Skirson's grey Terminator armor overshadowed the honor guard's body, and the black battle axe blade on his back glinted in the lumen light. "You, alone, think you can stop me?" The honor guard member from the 7th Battle Group fearlessly gazed into the iron-gray eyes, the same color as the armor, beneath the mask adorned with shattered stone fragments. "Leave them, or go back. Listen, boy, my name is Amlodi Skirson, Skirson's son, Wolf Lord of the 5th Great Company of the Space Wolves." Skirson's tone was like a killer's, cold as ice. "I heard you," the honor guard said calmly. "Leave them, or go back." The giant wolves hunched their bodies, looking fiercely at the much smaller wolves. The Catachan wolf, with its green fur, stared back at them just as fearlessly as its master. "Wolf Lord, don't forget the Wolf King's command, our mission." Wardmick's voice sounded, and he said to the giant wolves, "You wait outside." Skirson said nothing more and walked forward. Seeing that the giant wolves did not follow, the honor guard member allowed him to enter. As Skirson walked past the honor guard member, he saw the 7 red arrows painted on his right shoulder guard, his iron-gray eyes as sharp as knives. Order Shadows keenly felt a chill on his shoulder, and he instinctively reached for the Catachan fang at his waist. Wardmick smiled at Order Shadows, commendable courage. Order Shadows saw the smile on the rune priest's face. He keenly felt that the smile was like a Catachan viper. He tightened his grip on the Catachan fang, watching the rune priest warily. Wardmick walked into the Primarch office with a smile on his face, following his wolf lord. "My name is Amlodi Skirson, Skirson's son, Lord of the 5th Great Company of the Space Wolves. I obey the head wolf's command and heed your call to war." Oshiel Wardmick, rune priest of the 5th Great Company, greets Lord Ning Lu. "Lord Primarch, I hope to fight alongside the librarian of the Order Shadows." Ning Lu glanced at Wardmick, a sense of vigilance rising within him. He remembered that Wardmick would, at the end of this millennium, feign friendship with Ahriman to collect evidence of the Thousand Sons' crimes. Magnus, in order to gain approval, allowed Ahriman to candidly introduce the Thousand Sons' situation to Wardmick. This not only became evidence for Wardmick's accusation against the Thousand Sons at the Council of Nicaea but also crucial intelligence for the Wolves, attacked during the burning of Prospero. The Gene Seed Primarch also thought of Wardmick's reminder to Skirson at the office door. Mission. Russ's mission to them is probably to seize this opportunity to gather intelligence. Ning Lu knew the cunning hidden beneath the Wolf King's rough exterior. He sent Wardmick to befriend the Thousand Sons, and he used the fact that he believed the chronicler Caspar Ansbach Hausa was Aemon disguised as Magnus's original body servant. In my legion, the Beyonders disguised as librarians, plus the actual librarians, are even more numerous. It is indeed very possible that Russ is taking conspiratorial action against me in advance. Besides the large number of psychers in my legion, are there other reasons? The Gene Seed Primarch's eyes were deep, and his brain was working rapidly. I ordered the conquered territories to be hidden, and the sudden slowdown in the pace of conquest made Russ suspicious. Or was my small ambition detected by him? Thoughts flashed through Ning Lu's mind. Russ, since you want to play a conspiracy, then let's have a good game. The Gene Seed Primarch released his own pressure, his gaze coldly fixed on Skirson. Take off your mask. Skirson felt a mountain pressing down on him. He felt colder than being in the Fenris glaciers, his body trembled, and he bit his lips tightly. After a breath, he unwillingly raised his hands and unfastened the mask's buckle, his arms trembling from his inner struggle. Skirson's weathered face was revealed, he had no beard, and his cheekbones were prominent. Wardmick gripped his runic staff tightly. He felt the pressure disappear and instinctively raised a hand to wipe the cold sweat from his forehead. The 7th Battle Group will travel with your great company, and Librarian Okafor will accompany Wardmick. Wardmick's eyes lit up, and he said, as you wish. After Skirson and Wardmick left, Ning Lu immediately went to the Nation of Disorder. His spirituality spread, and after confirming that no one was around Sanchez, he immediately ordered the Space Monkey to prepare the Sequence 6 Conspirer potion using a giant ice worm that drills in the Fenris Glacial Fjord and a fire lotus root. While waiting, he couldn't help but think. The two main ingredients of the Conspirer, ice and fire, are indeed opposite. The Conspirer's control over flames is further enhanced, corresponding to the fire lotus root. The drilling worm perhaps corresponds to aspects of conspiracy like deception and trickery. A moment later, Ning Lu, carrying the Conspirer potion, arrived at the 4th layer of space. His spirituality spread, and he pulled Sanchez into the Nation of Disorder. Drink it. Sanchez picked up the iron-black potion. He saw a large amount of reddish rust floating inside. Sanchez tilted his head and drank it. As the liquid entered his stomach, he felt an itch in his brain, and his thoughts became more agile and clear. Two flames lit up in his eyes, flickering in the black mist. Ning Lu waited for the newly promoted Conspirer to gather the overflowing potion power, then ordered. The 5th Great Company of the Space Wolves will travel with your battle group. Beware of their conspiracies. Especially that rune priest, Wardmick, he is a cunning wolf. Russ's conspiracy. I have the Conspirer. Sanchez's eyes flickered, he felt his superhuman brain was more intelligent than ever before. As the Black Emperor spoke, a series of misleading, confusing, and deceptive conspiracies brewed in his mind. I obey your will. After Ning Lu sent Sanchez back to the Void Hunter, he went to the 2nd layer of space, where he used his spirituality to condense a magma lakebed environment 1 meter in diameter and 1 meter deep, then inserted the remaining fire lotus root into it. Afterward, he ordered the Space Monkey to prepare a hunter potion. Returning to the real world, he called out to the Honor Guard member at the door. Stevens, come in. The Honor Guard member of the 7th Battle Group quickly walked into the Primarch office. Father, this is your reward. A moment later, the newly promoted hunter knelt on the ground. Thank you, Father, for bestowing this power. I will faithfully perform my duties and earn you glory. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.